What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Favale coming at you with my certified fantabulous co-host, Mr. Grant Hughes. We have a very fun episode for you today. We have one hot take for every NBA team heading into this season, but at the end, stay tuned. We had a bunch of submissions from subscribers, listeners, Discord members, Twitter followers, the whole nine. And I selected the best, or the most, what we thought were the best 15 or so. So your submissions may have made it to the end of the show about whether this is essentially going to be, we're each providing a hot take, but we're also, the other person's going to have to judge whether we think it's hot or not. So this is a lot of fun. We're also putting out a podcast on a Saturday. So you're welcome, or I'm sorry. It feels like a trillion years since Grant and I have podcasted, even though we did a stream following the Karl-Anthony Towns trade. We did have, I mentioned this to our Discord members, it's not lost because it's up. Go check out the NBA podcast, but we did league pass rankings. So we had 3 hours locked and loaded, graphics and stuff ready for you to go on YouTube. That shit ain't seen the light of day anymore, folks. Blame Minnesota and New York, and I guess Charlotte tangentially, but they didn't really do too much. Grant, and everyone, shout out to Grant. He's just recovering from being sick this week, which is why we're recording so later in the week. And he's powering through to do it's not even just another podcast. It's an every team podcast. So shout out Grant Hughes, as always. How are you feeling, Mr. Hughes?
I'm feeling excited and also in need of clarification because, as I've mentioned to you, the whole hot take thing, I think it's pretty clear. I have a lot of failings as a person and a podcaster, but my grip on what is and isn't a hot take is real loose. I'm not sure. So I feel like I ask you this all the time, but in your mind, so if we're saying this is a hot take or it is not a hot take, like when we're doing the judging portion of it, is it a hot take if it's in the sweet spot of, oh, that's kind of implausible, but I like it? Or is it a hot take if it's like, that's never happening?
No, I think
please enlighten me.
That's a delusional take.
Okay.
And so it's just I think there's layers to it where is it hot or not? So I view a hot take as it's something you believe, but you don't necessarily set out for it to be, even though the theme of this podcast is hot takes, but it's something you believe that you think is contrarian to what everybody else believes. That determines the level of hotness. Where if you sit here when you do, because Grant has the West, I have the East, and you're like, Steph Curry will lead the Warriors in scoring. That's not a hot take.
That's not a hot take because everybody believes that.
Right. But if you're sitting here and if trying to be purposely contrarian, where Steph Curry is going to rank 5th on the Warriors in points per game. Well, it's okay, no.
So that's also not a hot take.
It is. It's diluted at that. It's too hot. That's what it is. So is it hot or not? And then is it too hot? So that's, you get into the mix of that. And as I was going through it, before we get started very quickly, I actually changed a couple from trades because I found myself predicting trades a lot. And you know why? Those feel so hot because of I know we just had the Karl-Anthony Towns blockbuster, but teams are just still trying to figure out how to navigate and plan on a year-by-year basis with the first apron, the second apron, the limitations within they work, and how we saw it with the Knicks and Timberwolves, where these apron teams functionally can't trade with one another unless it's a dollar for dollar match, which makes it interesting. So inherently, if you're sitting here saying any trade happens, it's almost a hot take because it's right. What?
Yeah. Okay. So I think where I get into trouble is the bold prediction, right, is its own thing, where it's when you make bold predictions, it's I'm not sure I think this will happen. And if you make 10 bold predictions, the target is maybe 2 of them should actually happen, but you're just making a case for why it's plausible. So this isn't that. The hot take is really dependent on what is the conventional wisdom, where do I diverge from it, and do I diverge from it in the correct amount, in that it's not insane, but it also just has to not be conventional wisdom.
Yeah, I think that's a great, when we're both doing bold predictions, I mean, Bleacher Report never asked us to do bold predictions or fake trades. It's really weird, but they never ask us to do them. But on the off chance we have to do them, bold predictions, I do always set out I'm trying to get a 10% or 20% hit rate on these things. But with the hot takes, I actually don't know if some of these are hot. There's more conviction behind what we're all these are things that if you asked me to predict, I don't know if I would, but they're things that I actually believe. Some of them I wouldn't predict if I don't want to be wrong. So
even the hot takes that I'm going to give that I don't actually believe, I will sell them as if I do. So they fall into the hot take bucket. How about that?
Yeah, there you go. Maybe they're consensus hot takes. Is that an oxymoron?
I don't know. We should probably start. I'm I feel like I'm slightly less confused than usual.
Yes, we're going to go alphabetically across the whole league, which is always a dangerous proposition because the alphabet for some reason changes all the time, Grant. It's just one of
Right.
those moving
It's
targets.
fluid.
We begin with the Atlanta Hawks. Look at that, already experts in the alphabet. I have the Eastern Conference. So, Grant, hot or not, Jalen Johnson's max salary in an extension that he technically could sign before this podcast comes out is $38.7 million. I think he will get $33 million or more in his extension, or if this goes to restricted free agency, his next deal. Is that hot or not?
I'm not sure that's hot because I personally agree with you. I don't know if I'm representative of conventional wisdom there, but I think I think the expectation should be that he gets real close to the max, right? I think, I mean, there's some risk there just because he really has just had the one breakout year, but like in a lot of cases, that's enough given his youth, given the position he plays, given all of the, the production he's had to this point. So I guess if I got to choose, I think that's not a hot take because I just agree with you. I think that's about the number. If 33 plus, he might just get the max, right? Like that's totally within play.
I do feel like if he got the max, that would be hot just because he's had one season. He hasn't had a season yet where he's averaged 15 minutes, more than 15 minutes per game and played in more than 65 games. Because last year was supposed to be that year and he ends up not hitting the games minimum. I also find it, and maybe this just gets resolved in restricted free agency. What are the Hawks doing? I just had this conversation with Lauren Williams from the AJC. And their direction is fascinating because they don't control their next 3 picks. They just drafted Zachary Risacher, number 1 overall. They won't pay the tax. We know that. Yet Trae Young makes a bunch of money. Jalen Johnson's coming up on what could be a mega extension. So I don't know. And then just the limited sample size with him as a central player makes me wonder, would they, and if he's going to sign it and he's dealt with some injuries, is he just going to take like 30 million? So I probably agree with you that it's not a hot enough take. So if I sat here and said Jalen Johnson gets the max, would you consider that hot?
That's a lot hotter to me just because of the reasons you outlined. Like, it's not like there aren't questions here about him. He's definitely the best, like the most maxable candidate that Atlanta has and would be the most maxable candidate that like a lot of teams would have, but it's certainly not a no-brainer. So like if he just got the max, it would be we would have a discussion about it and we would talk about all the reasons why that might be a bad call. Right.
I won't predict it because I honestly don't think he's going to get the max. And if he does, I think it's probably because he went to RFA. Like if he gets an extension, I'll be floored if he gets the max in an extension.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Which means that per the alphabet, we get to move on to your Boston Celtics. How exciting is that? Grant Hughes, hot or not, Jaylen Brown will lead the team in points per game. Now, do I need to give you my rationale behind it? I don't think so first. You need to tell me if it's hot or not.
My first reaction is that's a hot take. Because Jason Tatum exists and he's a better scorer than Jaylen Brown. But it is right in that sweet spot you want because, finals MVP, like just kind of continues to get better. But are you factoring in that Jason Tatum is still 17 years old? And could get a lot better.
19, Grant. He's aged a little bit.
No, he's de-aged. We've reached that point in the bit where he's de-aging.
So my thought process was this, is they were closer than I think many people realized last season because maybe they're still remembering when Jason Tatum averaged 30 points a game in 23. Jason Tatum was at 26.9. Jaylen Brown was at 23. Now, my rationale is there should be more shots to go around because of Kristaps Porzingis' injury. Like you're not going to give those shots to Luke Cornett and Xavier Tillman and Neemias Queta. But the other thing for me is I really think that Jason Tatum is going to have a career year as a playmaker. And so kind of the version we saw of him towards like his last 7 games of the playoffs, not just in the finals where he averaged over 7 assists per game. I think that's going to be more of a focus from him. And maybe subconsciously he might be thinking about, I want to have the same type of, because isn't it weird? Like Jason Tatum could average 27 points, 5 assists, and we're like kind of, But if he averaged like 25 and 8 or 9, people are like, wow, he belongs in the MVP discussion. And so I feel like it's going to be that type of a season. I don't know. My conviction level behind this, if I had to assign like on a scale of 1 to 10, is probably like a 5. Like I'm very much in the middle of it, but I also think Jaylen Brown has blossomed enough in terms of his scoring package, and also kind of just understanding that, all right, they need me to play make when I'm getting downhill. I can't have tunnel vision, but like you're not going to lean on Jaylen Brown for a ton of secondary playmaking. So I think just kind of understanding his identity coupled with, I really do think that we're going to see Jason Tatum focus on playmaking this year. That's what I'm going to go with. But this is one of the ones that I feel like could age like milk.
I mean, the way that you get there, you're thinking about it correctly, because I do think Tatum, the whole thing with Tatum of like, well, he's not a top 5 guy, and like it doesn't matter. They got a title now, so who cares? But it's like the way he might change that narrative is by sort of adding not adding because he can already do it, but like really like cranking up the non-scoring aspects of his game. And like Brown, Brown can't do that, right? Or it's like there's not a lot of evidence to suggest that Brown has like a bunch of playmaking upside, whereas Tatum like actually has already shown that and is just better to begin with. So I do like the thinking of how you get there. So it's a hot take, but it's like there's a real like logical underpinning to it.
So it's not too hot.
No, it's appropriately hot.
Like that, appropriately hot. Next up is your Brooklyn Nets. Now, my hot take is Ben Simmons will be promoted to social media manager. What do you think of that? I don't know. But so my actual prediction, this one does deserve a little preamble. I'm saying Cam Thomas will have a 35 usage rate or higher. Now, Luka Doncic was the only player in the league to have that last year. So that's the framing behind this. And Cam Thomas, for what it's worth, did rank 11th in usage rate last year. Hot or not, Grant?
I'm trying to decide if it would be a hotter take to say he was going to lead the league in scoring. Did you consider that at all? I feel like you see that out there every once in a while. That's more of a bold prediction.
That's like, what would have scared me? I never believed it, but what would scare me away from it is everyone thinking that Jordan Poole had a chance at the scoring title last year in Washington. And look at, Did you predict this on last year's episode?
It might have been a bold prediction. I don't know. I could 100% see myself being talked into like, he's going to shoot 32 times a game. Like he's just going to back into the scoring title. But yeah, no, is it hot or not? That's a high usage rate. I do. Well, everybody expects him to shoot a ton, right? For a bad team. It's like, that's how he's wired. And it's a, somebody's got to do it situation. 35% is so high.
And also, what if they trade him to a good team too?
Right.
He's extension eligible. So that could happen.
Do good teams want Cam Thomas, Dan? I don't know.
You're way too low on Cam Thomas.
I know I am. I'm way too low on Cam Thomas. I'm way too low on that player type in general. Although I don't know if you saw it.
I'm sorry, Mr. Don't trade Jordan Poole for SGA. That's the only like
I
for that.
refuse
For
to believe I ever
Jordan
said that. I refuse to believe it. You could show me video of me saying that and it would be fake. You doctored it. The Cam Thomas, I think I saw a clip from Media Day, and so I don't have context for it, but he was kind of asked like, basically he was responding to a like, what do you have to prove? Like kind of question. It might've been in the context of like an extension or whatever. And his response was kind of like, you guys know who I am more or less. Like I've proved it. And so I can't decide if that makes me think like he actually really is going to go out and prove it this year and is really going to chuck, or if it's like, he's just going to kind of be the same guy and not really up his usage, up his, his shot volume, all that stuff. It's just the logical conclusion here is that he's going to shoot a ton, right? Like that's just on this team. Who's going to do it if not him?
The two things where I would provide pushback to my own hot take would be he's so low turnover that
right.
could actually
bad shots are turnover. Like, I mean, for all intents and purposes,
but he did kind of ratchet up the playmaking last year. And if they envision him as like, well, we're going to try and plumb the depths of him as a passer, that will bring his basketball reference usage rate down. We could get into total usage, which would factor in assists. So there is a scenario to me in which maybe he just kind of has the same usage rate, if not a little lower, because he's focusing more on being a passer. There's also the scenario in which if he gets traded, which he could, if they don't like, they're entering this interesting phase where you don't want to be the Raptors necessarily, where you're kind of early on in your rebuild, but everyone's getting paid their second and third contract by you. So there's that to account for. And then there's also they might just cap what he's doing, where this could be more of an egalitarian approach as they're trying to figure out more information about other guys on their team, whether it's like a Trendon Watford with the ball in his hands or Jalen Wilson. So I think it's pretty hot. Luka was the only player in the league last year to have it. So it has to be hot, but I don't think, for the reasons that you just outlaid, I don't think it's inappropriately hot.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Our next team is your Charlotte Hornets. your favorite team of all time. So my prediction or hot take is LaMelo Ball will make an all-NBA team.
That's hot. That's a hot take. Games played, not a lot of evidence he's going to hit that. That's one way conventional wisdom would say he's not going to do it. It's real hard to make an all NBA team as a guard. That's another factor. It's not like out of the blue though, because the guy's been an all-star. Like the arrow was pointing way up until the ankle stuff started to happen a couple years ago. So it's hot, but it's like not shocking. Like you're not like blown away if he winds up third team all NBA, right? That's not. So I think you're just like you're threading the just hot enough needle here, like pretty effectively so far.
I feel like this might be an agenda of mine. I just feel like people are way too low on LaMelo Ball because of the injuries. And Grant, through their first 4 seasons, there have been 3 players throughout NBA history who've averaged 20 points and 7 assists. LaMelo, Luka, and Trey. If this guy is healthy, you don't have to say he'll make an all-NBA team. I think he's absolutely an all-NBA caliber player. Yeah. Now, I actually think what's spicier is not that LaMelo will have the numbers to warrant all-NBA. It's you mentioned the availability. You know, is he more likely to end the season with 70 games played or wearing a brace that goes from ankle to thigh? Yeah. And the other thing would be, can you make all-NBA playing for this iteration of the Hornets? Are they going to be good enough to where like the bar for just like people get mad that LeBron and AD made all NBA teams last year and the Lakers won where they were at 46 games. I don't think the Hornets, even if they stay healthy, are going to win 46 games. And we already know they're not staying healthy because Mark Williams is injured.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot of obstacles, right? Oh, the Mark Williams thing is like, come on, can we just, there's so many teams right now where it's like, can these guys catch a break? We'll get to Memphis in a minute. But yeah, that one hurts. Okay. That's another good one. Oh, I already been looking at your next one. I'm eager to get to the Bulls one.
Oh God. The Chicago Bulls, they will trade Kobe White by the trade deadline.
Explain your reasoning to me before I weigh in.
The Wizards already explained my reasoning because they flipped Denny Avdi at the peak of his value on a bargain bin extension that he will not extend off because the 140% raise from his salary is declining. So it's, it gets to 12 or 13 million. He's not taking 140% of that. And if he does, it's because something has gone, it's been a catastrophe. Kobe White's in the same boat, except that it's coming up even sooner. He's 2 years left on his deal, including this one. He's not extending off of a sub $13 million salary. It's just not going to happen. And if you were the Bulls, you could say like, all right, he's sort of young. So you want to pay him a bunch of money before you're good enough for that to matter. And like the best thing he's going to do is ruin your ability to have a high draft pick. And the other thing here and why I'm predicting it, I don't think that the Bulls have had this revelation and we know they're rebuilding. For all we know, they might fancy themselves contenders still. DeMar DeRozan, Andre Drummond, those guys were addition by subtraction. Caruso, you have Josh Giddey now, who in some way is going to infringe upon the usage of Kobe White. I understand Kobe White is good enough to play off of other primary ball handlers, but when you just saw his own progression on the ball last year as even a decision maker, even if you maybe don't trust the shot making, why? So if you were another team, and the Magic would be the team that I say like, oh, just go out and get Kobe White. If you can get 2 first-round picks and a young guy, like if you got Tristan Da Silva and 2 first-round picks from the Magic, or even if it was Jet Howard and 2 first-round picks from the Magic, just fucking take that deal.
Yeah, I think the Magic's a great example, not just because of the positional need they have and the just general offensive needs that they have, but like it's harder for me to imagine, even though he's young, like a bad team or a rebuilder wanting Kobe White or wanting him as much as a team like Orlando that does have like win now designs, just because if you're a bad team and you bring White on, it's like, well, first of all, why are we trading the kind of stuff Chicago would want? We need those picks. We're bad. And then also like you just put yourself in the same position where once like you're not going to extend him. So it would have to be a team that wants what Kobe White can give them like this year, next year. And then we'll just take on the hazard of him hitting unrestricted free agency, which again is like, that's a point that like we discuss all the time, but it's like, it's important because this is one of those weird situations where like his contract is too good for him to be maximally valuable to the team he's on. So something needs to change in the CBA to where like this situation doesn't happen because you're really penalized for signing a guy to a good deal. But yeah, I mean, from the Bulls perspective, I do think it makes sense to trade him because you do, this is 2 years down the road, whatever. You could just lose him for nothing. Like that really is like in the cards. And that is all I say that all the time. And it doesn't always happen, but it's always something I'm going to be concerned about just because it's it's a terrible look. And two, it's just like so destructive to your team planning to just watch a good player walk.
It also just happened to them because they didn't really get anything for DeMar DeRozan.
Right.
Leaving.
Yeah. Right. No,
the Spurs got something for DeMar DeRozan leaving the Chicago. The Chicago Bulls did not.
What are the Spurs going to get for Kobe White? We'll see. I don't know.
Do you know who would be a sneaky team for him? If you're Detroit, would you trade one of your young wings for Kobe White? Because I'm assuming the Bulls don't want Jaden Ivey if they have Josh Giddey there.
Yeah. I mean,
or would you trade Jaden Ivey and one of your own first round picks for Kobe White?
I think, again, you run into the same problem the Bulls have, but the fit is so much more sensible of White next to Cade Cunningham than like just name the other Pistons guard or wing that you would like to think about in the deal. So are you talking Thompson or Holland or like, I don't think they're trading either of those guys.
Would you, but I'm asking if I don't think I would trade. You have so much equity invested in both. And I personally wouldn't trade Thompson for Kobe White because I'm so high on Asar Thompson. I just haven't seen enough of Ron Holland, but he was number one on Jonathan Wasserman's Bleacher Report's big board. So my gut would say, no, they're not giving up one of the young wings. I do wonder, like, you could maybe rope into like if you were giving up Jaden Ivey and a first round pick, I wonder if that would be like, maybe it pique the Bulls' interest, or can you rally a third team who values Jaden Ivey to the point that they'll send the Bulls another first round pick or something?
I think before we move on, like, isn't it just such an amazing, symptom of the Bulls, like snake bit status as roster builders, that the two players on the best contracts on the team, White and Ayo Dosunmu, are like guys they should probably trade because they can't re-sign them or they can't extend them. They could re-sign them. We always like just blow over that possibility, but it's like, if you're either of those guys, all things being equal, are you going to take the same money from Chicago or are you going to go somewhere else? Like, I don't know. The extension thing is so ridiculous.
By the way, I came very close to predicting that Lonzo Ball would play in 42 or more games this year. I would love to just manifest that into existence.
I'm so ready for Lonzo Ball to be good again. It's just like completely irrational, but that's one of my, I'm definitely hoping for that.
Our next team is the Cleveland Cavaliers, and I might need to change this one a little bit. So I'm prepared to move up from it. Evan Mobley will double his 3-point attempts per game. Now, the problem here is he averaged 1.2 last year, but when he came back from injury, he was at 1.8. So maybe I'll reframe it to say Evan Mobley will average at least 3-point attempts per game next season.
I mean, I'm disappointed if you're wrong. So I don't know what, right? Like that just has to happen. And new coach. So maybe Kenny Atkinson like gets him to do what he hasn't in the past. More than yeah. I don't know if that's hot enough, Dan. I think like the mark needs to be like, he's going to get up. If you said he's going to get up 5 a game, like
that's just, have we ever seen someone go from 1.2 to 5?
I have no idea. I'm trying to think of just like who, well, like a Brook Lopez situation, maybe, where it's just like does not shoot threes and suddenly that's the most important part of his offensive game. I don't even know if Lopez did that though. Like just because I'm trying to think, like, I guess it was.
He did. He went, okay. That was a good.
Give me the numbers
off rip. So 2015, 2016 in Brooklyn, 0.2 3-point attempts per game. 2016, 2017 in Brooklyn, 5.2 attempts per game. And we're talking about over 70 appearances in each season.
So he like 10x'd it. Is that what you're telling me? From year to year?
He more than 10x'd it. He like 40x'd it. Whatever.
Evan Mobley's going to get up 18 threes a game. You heard it here first.
You're probably right that maybe I should have been more ambitious here, because I think a lot of Cavs fans or people who cover the Cavs push back and say it's not Mobley shooting that's as important as him developing his handle. But the best way to try and get him in situations to handle the ball is space the floor so that you can catch it and then attack that way.
I was thinking about this with another team we're going to get to, and we're not going to talk about them, so it's not like burning the idea. But like the idea, Klay Thompson has never been like, oh my God, look at that handle. But like that guy got to the rim like a lot for someone with no bag and like, no real offensive zip, just because, oh my God, he's going to shoot it. I have to close out at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Mobley's never going to be anything like that, But if like a cornerstone of his game becomes a willingness to shoot threes without hesitation on the catch, like suddenly he's going to look like a better ball handler and driver. So like, I think you're focused very much on the right thing. I mean, like, yeah, my number's 5. Like, I think he's got to get up 5, and like he probably won't, but that would be the hot take territory for me.
Well, wait, we should timeline this out properly because so Brook Lopez, who was coaching the Nets in 2015, 2016, that was,
God,
do you remember off cuff? I mean,
no,
like, so that was Lionel Hollins and Tony Brown. And then the next season, guess who comes in?
Is
Kenny
it Atkinson? Oh, wow. My God. It's going to happen.
So the proper adjustment would be Evan Mobley. Should we meet in the middle and say 4? Or do you think it needs to be 5?
I think it to be a hot take, it's 5 because it should.
I honestly believe it's going to be 5 now because of just I had no idea that I'd forgotten about the Brook Lopez jump. What's really funny is I was covering that team on a day-to-day basis, like boots on the ground, that first Nets team under Kenny Atkinson. And the whole Brook Lopez shooting threes thing was a revelation. I guess I didn't appreciate in real time that he went from 0.2 3-point attempts per game to 5.2.
I mean, he kind of, but I haven't, as you've been talking, I've been trying to think of somebody else that had a jump like that. And Lopez might just be the only guy. Like
he has the same coach though. Like, come on.
Yeah, it helps. It helps. Like he's going to definitely go to Evan Mobley and say like, it worked for this guy who also now is like a defensive player of the year perennial candidate, kind of like you, like not the worst blue. Now, if Jared Allen starts getting up 5 threes, then we'll know something's really going on.
Okay. If Evan Mobley's taking 5 threes a game and hitting them at a league average clip, what is he like? Forget about the rest of his offensive game. He becomes the best player in the NBA, like within the next half decade, like no lower than the 10th. Like, I don't,
I was going to be like, I don't know, top 25. You really went for it. I mean,
just think about what he does defensively. And if he's shooting league average on like real volume from 3.
Yeah, he becomes like Jonathan Isaac, except if Jonathan Isaac played 33 minutes a game and
shot more threes.
So it's just like that player doesn't exist, I guess. So he would be, yeah. I mean, he's so valuable as it is, but just like that dimension would be.
Would he be Bam Adebayo with a 3-point shot
league altering? I don't know. Like, yeah, it makes. So I would if you told me that Evan Mobley finished the season averaging 5 threes a game at like 35%, I would say the Cavs have the best record in the East by like 5 games. They just like that's
a hot thing.
Well, I mean, they might have the best record in the East anyway. I don't know what the playoff situation is going to be, but like that would change everything for them. It would be because
be franchise altering for sure. Yeah,
because then like we can play Isaac Okoro. We don't care. We're getting volume 3-point shooting from this position that nobody else really does. Now we can just put this awesome defender out that like it changes your whole like roster makeup potentially. Good one.
I'm glad we stumbled into the Brook Lopez Kenny Atkinson little anecdote because look at Jermaine here. Kenny Atkinson literally the head coach of the Cavs now. That's amazing. Your turn, Grant.
Oh man, take a break, Dan. That was a run for you. I got a couple in a row here. Okay, so based on yours, this already feels like not hot enough. But I think Derek Lively is going to break the all-time field goal percentage record, which was set by his teammate Daniel Gafford last season at 72.5%. Now that you can get some like really wonky numbers if you don't filter for like qualify, if you don't make sure they qualify for the field goal percentage league lead, but like 72.5% is very, very high. I just think the case is that Lively has never been in a better position to just do what he's really good at, which is catch and finish. He's going to have more space to roll, more space to potentially offensive rebound because everybody's going to be like sucked out on Klay Thompson and the Luka Kyrie, like two-headed monster of playmaking is going to command a ton of defensive attention. You can't like adequately cover all those threats and also close down the defensive boards very well. So I think he's getting a million putbacks. I think if I'm going to critique this, it's one, maybe not, out there enough. And 2, it presumes he's going to, play enough, not get hurt, not get, minutes taken away by Gafford, like that kind of thing. It's a percentage stat. So it's like, he just needs to qualify, but still, I don't know. What are your thoughts? Hot, not hot enough?
I think it might be appropriately hot just because he put up shots between like 3 and 10 feet last year and hit them at a 50% clip. And so I think, or 52% clip, whatever it was, that's a number that could feasibly come down.
Right.
And so the fact that he shot, his average shot distance, I'm actually looking now, 2.7 feet. And so that makes you think, okay, that's really not hot enough. But if he's gonna, look at a DeAndre Jordan, like was never putting up those other types of shots. And so the fact that I think there'll be at least the slightest variability in 23% of his 23% of his shots came between 3 and 10 feet last year. So I actually think that's appropriately hot. Like maybe that share comes down but also how does he deal with being higher volume too? I assume that this year you mentioned him getting injured, but he might just play more and have to take more shots. And so you look at it and say, well, what did he shoot on twos last year? He shot 75% on twos, right? So just it's hot because now you're talking about a larger body of work and there's always just going to be variance in there. So if it was different and we had okay, this is his 4th season and he's been right around 75%, the entire on his field goal shooting the entire time. But because he's entering his sophomore year, working off a high baseline, defense is going to be more keyed into his playmaking in the middle of the floor too, which could end up impacting him. I don't think it's a bad hot take. I think it's appropriately hot though.
It might've been more fun to just say both him and Gafford will shoot over 72% or something insane like that. Cause man, who's got it better than rolling centers for Dallas? It's just as good as it gets. Let's go to the Denver Nuggets. This one I feel like is hot because public sentiment has turned on this guy like nobody's business. I think Jamal Murray is going to make his first All-Star team.
That's too hot. Let's move on. It's not happening.
Here's the thing. Looked awful in the summer during the Olympics. Fell off in the playoffs last year. Has just struggled to stay healthy. The lower body injuries have kind of piled up over, it's not like he's been in the league for 100 years. He's still relatively young, but I just think the case is one, we've just swung too far towards the Jamal Murray is a bad contract. He's never going to get it back. We're forgetting he had one of the really statistically by a lot of measures, the best year of his career last year. Shot the best he's ever shot from 3. I think it's 42. I don't have the numbers up. I think it's 42.5%. Scored over 20 a game. And just Christian Brown ain't picking up the case. There's not a lot of KCP slack to pick up offensively. Christian Brown's not picking up all of it. I think Murray is in a position where more is going to be asked of him. I think unless you really think Russell Westbrook's going to run those second units and it's all going to go great, don't see that. So the argument you'd make, which you should make now, is he's not staying healthy. He might not even play enough games to qualify, and he's kind of slipping. I just don't see that based on the bulk of last year. I think we've gone too far towards Murray's not good.
I think it's fair to, anyone who's saying Jamal Murray isn't good is just an idiot. I don't there. Yeah. But my whole thing is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Steph Curry, Luka Doncic. Even the peak of Jamal Murray, which other potential, Devin Booker, John Morant, Anthony Edwards. Maybe Anthony Edwards ends up being a front court player, and I'm sure maybe there'll be some fun, futzing and fiddling to make Devin Booker from who is the peak of Jamal Murray is better than how many backcourt players in the Western Conference. The ones we
not any of those guys you just mentioned.
Maybe you could say Steph's getting older, but just how
dare you?
But it's just a fact. I'm not saying that he's
bad.
Not.
You don't know that.
He's not de-aging like 14-year-old Jason Tatum. So that's way too hot. I think it's way too hot, but I do think it's a nice correction from where public sentiment is. And I was having this conversation with Adam Mares during our Denver Nuggets look ahead. Last year, I was going on shows, Denver Nuggets shows, multiple ones, and they were asking me, is Jamal Murray a top 10 player? And so it's this time, that championship glow really does a lot for you. And now it's, well, why would the Nuggets max him out? Yeah, they have no other options, and I don't know who they trade him. Why would they give him max money? So I do agree with you that the discussion around him has shifted too far. There's going to have to be a rush of snake bites throughout the entire Western Conference backcourt if he's going to make an all-star team. It's not happening. And frankly, he's not good enough. So we could also just,
I think the best argument is even if he's fully healthy and does what he did last year for the first half of the season, it's a logjam. There's too many guys that are just better than
unless he's going to come out and average 25 and 8. I don't know why I keep coming back to that number, but and is he gonna, I guess you could say sure, but also
I was gonna say, we do have the thing, it still happens where it's I don't know that I actually do know. I don't think this is likely where the Nuggets are way ahead of everybody else in the West as voting concludes. And it's we got to give them 2. We can't just have Jokic that. that's maybe a way in. I don't know, because we've had some like semi-undeserving all-stars with that justification in the past.
Watch him make the All-Star game now. I won't feel bad if it's because all these other guys just end up missing time. I just can't see a pathway to him being better than so many of these different dudes. We're back to me already.
Too hot. Yeah, give me Detroit.
Short little break. So speaking of All-Stars, Cade Cunningham will make the All-Star game this year, Grant, hot or not?
I wish I could catalog all the guys in the East. I wish I could do the same thing you did with the West. It's like, so who are the All-Star locks in the backcourt if healthy in the East?
Well, the other thing is just like the positions are so fungible now. They're going to be like, well, Cade's 6'6". Is he really? Because you could vote.
Luka in as a forward guy. Yeah, that helps.
I think with Jamal Murray, though, he doesn't have that flexibility, which ends up harming his game.
So that by definition, because there just isn't it, like, I don't know, Halliburton, Jalen Brunson, like those guys are going to be better than anything Cade does. But then it's like, okay, cool, he's a forward. So like you don't even have to worry about those guys. I think it's a little hot. It's a little hot. I don't think conventional wisdom would expect him to be an all-star, but it's better than the Murray take for sure.
He ended up at 23 points, 7.5 assists last year while hitting 35.5% of his threes. He had the step back going. He'll probably need to get to the basket more, finish better once he gets there. He has this is him working for majority of last season without actual spacing. One of my other hot predictions was almost that Detroit ranks in the top 10 of 3-point attempt rate, because you can say whatever. There's a lot of redundancies with their youth in terms of space that they occupy or weaknesses, let's say, with Ron Holland, Asar Thompson, Jalen Duren's not going to take threes, and then Jay Ivey's a wild card. But Tobias Harris, Simone Fontecchio, Malik Beasley's there. Tim Hardaway Jr. is going to get threes up. If Marcus Sasser plays, he will get threes up. Cade Cunningham plus spacing is a thing now in Detroit. And that's not something we could say this time last year. So I think this is someone who's probably going to be at like it wouldn't shock me if let's throw 25 and 8 out there. I mean, he was 23 and 7.5 last year.
25 and 8, even I was going to bring up, like, what about the team success component that matters for All-Star? Like 25 and 8 might just make it not matter if the Pistons aren't winning enough. I still think
I guess Jay Ivey will play a bunch, but like if Jay Ivey's not good, like this could be a 30 and 10 guy for what level of the offense is he going to need to run? Where is the relief coming? I guess you say, well, then they'll experiment with Asar Thompson and Ron Holland running things. So I'm not predicting 30 and 10 for Cade Cunningham, but this is my version of the Jamal Murray, where it's because he's on his fun max. I don't think people are as, like taken aback by what he got, but also he got a shit ton of money and they just maxed him out like a no-brainer. And the discourse was, why would you do that? Why not play the RFA game? And you're Detroit. You don't have the luxury of doing that. And also I firmly believe that he's good enough. So as you were kind of coming to the defense of Jamal Murray, I think people saw there's the injuries with Cade from the previous season. And I think people looked at the turnover issues he had for like the first quarter of last season or whatever it was. And that just became the defining issue around him. It's like, well, those got better, even though the Pistons really didn't.
Yeah. And like, I definitely am. I've said several times before with the RFA stuff, like use it as a tool. Like this is a weapon you can use, teams. I don't feel like that was the move with Cade Cunningham and a couple other guys. Like you just pay that guy at your first opportunity.
I think unless you're a market that can actually cap space to use. So like if you are a team like Detroit that's embattled and the players don't have a reason to give, like you're not Philly. Right. Like you just don't have the track record of Daryl Morey in general. Like there's a new front office there. And just if you're Detroit, I guess the only reason to have cap space would be for trades too. No one's coming to free. Like you know who you get in free agency? Tobias Harris at an inflated contract.
Right.
So,
okay, good one. Let's go to the Warriors here. I can't wait for you to weigh in on this, Dan. I think Andrew Wiggins this season will no longer be viewed as a bad contract / dead weight / negative contract anymore. I think we're going to swing back to the days of when he signed that deal coming off of, holy shit, this guy was like the second best player on a title winner for, a couple weeks. Still happened. I think we're going to get closer to that than where we are right now, where it's like, oh my God, he's coming off a career low in scoring. He was unavailable for a good chunk of 2 years. And I'm just looking at this graphic now, and I'm so upset. I've never seen it before.
I thought you would appreciate it. Hat tip, friend of the podcast, Jacob Bourne, for texting me this image. I thought, doesn't Andrew Wiggins look like he was AI'd in this? I wasn't sure that it was him. but
it
it's him.
almost looks like it's I see the cheer squad in the background because it almost kind of looks like a Gary Payton like doppelganger too. It's like, are these just two dudes that look like Andrew Wiggins and Gary Payton?
And friend of the former host of this podcast, Adam Frommel, said they look like cardboard cutouts.
They do look like maybe that. Either way, love it. What do you think? Too hot? Not hot enough?
I'm gonna say why it's too hot.
Okay.
Because he already missed time in Hawaii because he was out getting laid.
I don't know this story.
No, he missed time. He was sick apparently. So I made a little leg joke there. But I don't think it's. If I had to pick, it might not be hot enough. If I had to pick, that's the entire point of sex.
I love that you think that. Makes me feel good.
I don't think it's hot enough because expectations have a way, like now that they've kind of normalized, where no one's expecting him to be the second best player on a title contender or even a third best player. So the bar is so low. And I think you could look at it this way. Do you want the next 2 years of DeAndre Ayton's contract or the next 3 years of Andrew Wiggins' contract? That's a debate right now.
Yeah.
If you're just going to tell me that he comes in, kind of plays within himself on offense, and like even like his like even when he's been bad, like the threes have by and large gone down at a decent clip anyway. So it's probably not hot enough. But I guess if you're framing it as a good contract, that's probably the appropriately amount of hot, because I think there will still be that inherent distrust no matter how well he plays. But like, you're not asking him to do something he hasn't done in Golden State before. And it's just sort of, but I guess the pushback would be like, that was the outlier season for him. Like, just like, because we're going to dismiss it for Jordan Poole, why are we giving Andrew Wiggins the benefit of the doubt?
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, we probably have gone too far without mentioning, like, he's had off-court stuff the last couple of years. Turns out his father was really sick. His father passed away. Condolences. Like, I could sympathize with anybody that had a rough time and was missing time and like not prioritizing being in shape and like all this other stuff. Real world shit was happening to Andrew Wiggins. It's hard to square that with like his reputation in Minnesota of like, he floats in and out of games and he's, not super committed. And that's certainly, there have been elements of that in Golden State, even at the best times, I think. But it's like, we can't just discount the fact that he's coming out the other side of like a horrible personal situation. So that's part of it. And like, I know we're focusing on like, is he a value contract? It's like, he's going to be just under 19% of the cap this year, 18 after that, 17 after that. Like, for a guy who's like pretty, even at his worst, like pretty clearly a starter, I think, and can help on both ends. Like, I don't think it's a huge stretch that he's going to, that he's going to become like a neutral value contract or one that like teams are giving up stuff to get, hypothetically. I don't know if the Warriors are going to trade him. I just think his reputation is like, it's about as bad as it can be right now, right? Based on the last year plus of how he's performed.
And I guess also factoring in the off-court stuff for sure. And then the drop-off was just so big last year to where like he didn't even take 4 threes a game. And so I guess you could also question too, if they're going to really try and develop Jonathan Kuminga, if they're actually going to give Moses Moody a chance. And then I know Kyle Anderson's going to play a bunch of small ball 5, but you have DeAnthony Melton who can kind of play the wing as well. What will his role look like on this team, especially? But I think Jonathan Kuminga is the big one, is like, that's the one where, well, can you play those two dudes together a bunch? And maybe, but like, if you view that as a fragile dynamic, that probably skews towards, well, then this is going to be too hot, because how important is Andrew Wiggins in the, like, to the, let's say the core lineups or core looks of this Warriors team just out of the gate is even going to have the chance to kind of rebuild his value.
Yeah. I would close by saying, because the next team is mine anyway, I just so completely understand how Andrew Wiggins gets you as a fan, and how I understand where the frustration with him comes from, because like he just goes out and shows you how incredible he can be. And he's like, nope, you're not going to see that for 18 months. Just like, oh, there was some more of it. And then it's gone again. I totally get it.
Look,
but I'm rooting for him, to be honest.
Sorry, you should have came in and said Andrew Wiggins is going to average 5 defensive rebounds per game for the first time in his career. That would have been a hot take.
He only does that in the finals. I have the Houston Rockets. Dan, I think Reed Shepherd is going to shoot under 38% from deep, which might sound like, oh, okay, that's above league average. He made over half his threes in college. So miss me with the, like, that's not, I mean, that would be surprisingly low, I think, for someone like him. And he's still going to run away with Rookie of the Year. I just
okay. That is hot. The latter part makes it hot.
And,
I don't know the whole, as a
You don't
rookie
care about the
coming.
shooting. So let's just amend it. I think he's going to win Rookie of the Year. And the reason that would be a hot take is because everybody's like, is he going to play?
That's
And my response is like, he's going to be undeniable. I think it's just going to get to a point where the Rockets say to themselves, we just can't keep him off the floor. We're trying to win. I think he's going to make a huge impact on both ends. I think every clip of film you see, granted, it's summer league, and then it's like workouts in camp. I don't know if you saw the one the other day where it's just like he's dominating both ends in a scrimmage. You can't show me a clip where it's just like, oh yeah, no, I can see why they'd bench him. It's like, no, you're going to find 29 minutes for this guy. And then maybe you trade Fred VanVleet and maybe you trade Jalen Green because you don't want to extend him. I just think he's going to be so obviously impactful that Houston will find a way to help me skirt the playing time caveat here, which is admittedly like that's what you would say is like, he can't win Rookie of the Year. He's going to barely play in that guard rotation.
So yeah, it's hot for that reason, because we don't know how quickly. And when we were talking to Salman Ali during the Houston Rockets look at it, he doesn't seem to think that he's going to play a huge role on this team. And if he does, I would imagine they have traded at least one of Jalen Green or Alperen Şengün, just like in terms of making him a central focus of the offense. And it says they have Cam Whitmore on this team. And then do you want to give Amen Thompson more on ball? I know Reed Shepard doesn't have to play on the ball, but like that's kind of if you're going to have Reed Shepard on the court, you should also probably let him play it, like the way he can get to his mid-range spots when he's on the ball.
Yeah.
So that's why it's too hot. And the other thing too is, let's just say he's undeniable when he's on the floor. Like the minutes thing with the team. So Victor Wembanyama wins it last year at 29.7 minutes per game. LaMelo Ball won it at 28.8 in 2020, 2021. Malcolm Brogdon won it in 2016, 2017 in a banner year for rookies at 26.4. Those are the only Rookie of the Year winners since the year 2001 that have logged under 30 minutes per game. And even Mike Miller in 2001, 29.1. So we're looking at 4 Rookies of the Year averaged under 30 minutes per game. I think that's all time. I'm scrolling through it now. So like that is
super hot, Dan.
Like, so 5 Rookie of the Year winners have averaged under 30 minutes per game. That's you need to like, he needs to, the lowest total for Rookie of the Year is 26.4 with Malcolm Brogdon. I don't even think he's as short of that. But if your argument is he's undeniable, I tend to agree with you. I actually think that if you treated him, and I'm not saying he deserves this, you have Şengün, you have other Amen Thompson, but if they treated him as like, no, this is our tentpole building block, that he would win Rookie of the Year and run away with it. I just don't know if they're going to view him in those terms.
I think, yeah, the minutes are obviously, that to me is why it's a hot take and probably too hot. I don't know. I think I'm obviously way too in the bag. But
no, you're not. That's the thing.
Well, here's the thing. I think the path to whatever the minutes need to be, high 20s minimum, right? I think if you're the Rockets, in a way that is pretty different from almost all of your other, like the million rookie scale guys you have, is like, it's not like you put Shepard out there and say like, oh, we're giving away something. It's more like, we need better shooting. Let's play Reed Shepard. We need more playmaking. Let's play Reed Shepard. We need more defensive disruption. Let's play Reed Shepard. Like all of the things you might need, he can provide. And now this is insane to say because he hasn't played an NBA minute yet, but everything we've seen and heard and read is just like, this guy just contributes across the board in a way that defies like the prototypical like small white guard. And so like, I just think there's going to be so many ways where it's obvious that he's helpful, that it's like, it's on the fringes of possibility that he's going to get the minutes to do it. But yeah, I think it's not a hot take if you said like, if he plays 30 plus minutes, he's just going to win Rookie of the Year, because this class sucks. And most of these guys are going to be on terrible teams. That's another different aspect, is he's going to be playing. I mean, it cuts both ways because his team has better players, but like, he's going to get noticed more. He's definitely like, he's going to do impactful stuff for a team that's winning. It's like Sarr could have crazy numbers in Washington. I don't think he will. And everybody will be like, okay, cool, they won 14 games. Like, that's just not Rookie of the Year stuff.
I guess that would be not the strongest argument, but the pushback to the minutes would be, he's just going to be so much better than the field that if he's averaging 23 minutes versus Zachary Risichet getting 30 and like not doing much for the Atlanta Hawks, perhaps that will make up the difference.
Yeah.
But like, you would have to be a Victor Wembanyama level of undeniable.
Right.
for that. And I still even think that if you're that and you're averaging under 25 minutes a game, people are just going to be like, well, no, we have to go with availability and playing time.
Yeah. I think the quality of the class overall is like a decent, decent support for him winning Rookie of the Year, because it might be a Brogdon situation, even if he doesn't get to the minutes, where it's like, who the hell else are we going to pick? Like all these guys are as advertised. This class was thought to be bad. It is bad. And so somebody's got to win it. I don't know.
We are on to me. I have the Indiana Pacers, who are also just your team, your Indiana Pacers. My prediction, or hot take, excuse me, at least one of Bennedict Mathurin and or Jarris Walker will be traded. And if you're watching on YouTube, you know which player I think is more likely to be traded.
I don't know if this is hot enough. I mean, I fully agree with this. And I also would say
the Pacers YouTube commenters, this would be the hottest take of all time.
Okay, well, consider this like every set of a team's fans just overvalue. It's like the truest thing ever. They overvalue their own young guys and undervalue everybody else's assets. Like the Pacers should trade one or both of them, right? Like, and they've been acting as if they like don't care about the futures of either of these guys.
No,
like
I don't know. That's a hard.
That's hard. But it's like they're not exactly, put it this way, they're not exactly like setting up the roster to feature Bennedict Mathurin or Jarris Walker.
Correct. I mean, they kind of have with Jarris Walker, just not in the ways that I think that Jarris Walker is going to be good, to where it's okay, they need him to be strictly a wing defender now, and maybe he gets there. I don't know the stuff he does the best on offense. I guess if he's going to hit threes at the clip he did last year, but he barely played. It was low volume, but it's like the stuff out of the short roll that he could, like, you're not getting that if you have to play with Pascal Siakam and or Miles Turner. So I guess why it's a hot take here though, is like Indiana has paid Tyrese Halliburton. They have paid Obi Toppin. They've paid Pascal Siakam. Andrew Nembhard's deal is going to kick in the year after this one. And you start like, this isn't a team that's going to just readily pay the tax willy-nilly. And what you've also kind of done is, okay, like you do have some limited like salary. Like you're not going to, I guess you could trade Obi Toppin once his restriction lifts. But the reason why I view it as hot is because this is a team that I think is, they don't want to give up on young guys that they might believe in. I think when you look at the parts on the roster and say, well, they clearly need a wing, why wouldn't you trade Jarris Walker for one? I mean, that was true the past two off seasons and they still kept him like after drafting him. So that's why it seems hot. And then it's also just, what is the trade value of either of these guys? And then what is the trade value of the primary matching salary? Like Obi Toppin, okay, he played well for the Pacers. 4 years and $60 million is not a contract that's viewed favorably around the league. I'll tell you that right now. So are you giving up Bennedict Mathurin or Jarris Walker to get you Dorian Finney-Smith? Like, that's why it feels like I'm going to say I probably would give up Bennedict Mathurin for Dorian Finney-Smith. I'm just not a Bennedict Mathurin guy. That is a hot take. That's why I didn't throw it here. I'm not there, but I still have more hope for Jarris Walker in the larger context of this team. But even if you think these guys are good, the Pacers have diminished their ability to stand out with the way that they've built out their roster. Like this, what is Bennedict Mathurin's role? Unless you think that he's going to come in and you remember that game against Milwaukee where he looked like the defensive player of the year before his injury. Yeah. Unless that's the new default, like he's not a wing defender. So I kind of think this might not be hot enough. But then when I start to go sit there and do like, well, who are you trading them for? Like you could say Jeremy Grant would be great on this team. Do the Pacers want his money? Getting to that number will be a chore. It might cost you both Mathurin and Jarris Walker. And then are you doing that for Jeremy Grant? Now, if I was a billionaire, I'm not going to. Yeah, I'd probably do that. Like I think Jeremy Grant might put this team over
that's
the top.
The guy. That's the guy I keep thinking of. I mean, he's a little bigger than you want. But if you think he can still guard wings, like that's your guy, and you do give up both for them. This is if you, as the Pacers, are not put off by like, oh my God, Boston's too good, Philly's too good, the Knicks are too good. We're a level below that, even with Jeremy Grant. So maybe then you don't do it. But like, just in terms of like, if you're trying to make the product as good as it can be this year, next year, the year after, I think you trade both of them.
Here's a good example. I think this is predicated on teams probably like to have him defend down. And so it's like, okay, well, you have Andrew Nembhard and TJ McConnell. This makes sense. But if you get Dylan Brooks, I'd give up either one of these guys for Dylan Brooks.
Yeah, I think I would too.
So you're saying, but is it, do you ultimately think, I don't know what you landed on. Is it still not hot enough, or is it just knowing how the Pacers operate and maybe the realities of their trade value? Because look, you certainly with Jarris Walker, if they just trade him for like a guy who's either coming off the bench or not closing, like guaranteed to, I guess if he's even closing games, but if it's a role player and you're trading what was a top 10 pick in his second year for that just takes a level of kind of admittance that we're not used to seeing teams give.
I guess my initial reaction is it's not hot enough. And I don't know if I'm probably not reflecting consensus, but it's just in my opinion, like, yes, obviously you trade one or both if you're the Pacers for all the reasons we talked about.
Who's the worst player you would like? You'd probably trade Ben McMatherin for Cody Martin, wouldn't you? If I told you Cody Martin,
that's a really good one. If you told me Cody Martin was going to be healthy for the whole year, I'd think about it.
You have issues.
I do. I feel like Cody Martin's your guy too. Or you like both of them.
Cody Martin before Caleb Martin, there was literally
you were in on Cody before people were in on Caleb. How about that?
Right. So he just needs to stay healthy. Would I trade one of these guys for him like that? Probably not because of the health factor predominantly, but
that would have been a sufficiently hot take as they will trade one of these guys for Cody Martin specifically. That would have been hot.
I would love to give Kevin Pritchard truth serum and ask who the worst player he would trade one of these for is, because publicly he'd probably say like, I don't know, like Zion or like someone like Herb Jones or something. But it'd be really funny if the Pelicans were so just desperate for people that they think could play like the center position. If you could get Trey Murphy for Jarris Walker and picks. Trey Murphy's injured right now.
In this hypothetical, they think Jarris Walker is going to play center for them.
Well, he's 6'8", and like the rest of their dudes are like 6'8" that are going to be playing center.
Yeah, I guess Daniel Tice listed at 6? He's probably listed at
6'9".
Yeah, he probably is 6'8", but is listed 6'9".
I was having this conversation the other day. Doesn't Daniel Tice feel like he's 37 years old? He's not even 30.
Is that right? He's not 30. He does feel like he's been around forever.
Maybe he had a birthday, but for some reason, it's not like he's played for a zillion teams, but he's 32. Okay, but doesn't he seem older than that?
I just wish you wouldn't say ridiculous things sometimes.
That was just flat out wrong. But doesn't he even feel older than that? I feel like
he does. He does. Dan, Los Angeles Clippers are going to trade Kawhi Leonard this season. What are your thoughts on that?
One, that you already know the Lakers take might involve JJ Redick, but it's hot because they're in the Intuit Dome, and I'm assuming they can like. By the way, they're opening up the Intuit Dome, and there's a chance.
I was just going to stop you, and we were going to have to do 5 minutes on the whole they're start opening, because I've done it too. The whole it's a new arena. They got to have a product in there.
Right. But the other thing is they need to have a product in there because they don't have their first round picks for the next 5 years. They don't have control over them. But the aside was, isn't it wild that the Intuit Dome might open without Kawhi or Paul George in the first game because Kawhi's injured and Paul George left, and James Harden might just be the face of. I never would have predicted that 2 years ago, whatever. Anyway, it's hot because even if you throw the picks, like you don't own your own picks, and I don't think OKC is going to trade for Kawhi Leonard when they have to. Oh, look, what
if they did? How fun is that if they did?
Yeah, but they have the Clippers over a barrel to the point where they'd be like, yeah, we'll give you back like one of your first round picks. And are you going to do it at that point?
If it's 2020, what do they have? They don't have 2025, do they, or do they? I can't remember.
I think 2025 might be going somewhere else, but they do have 2026, I believe. We can look that up. But my whole thing is because you don't control your own picks, and even let's just say you trade him to the Oklahoma City Thunder, which that is even if the cost was low, you have to you pay Shea, you're gonna have to worry about paying J-Dub and Chet Holmgren, and you're not getting either of those dudes for Kawhi Leonard at this point. So what are you getting back for him that would be like, okay, this is fine. We don't own our own picks, but we got enough stuff back that it's confident. So, and by the way, OKC could technically, I think, end up with their 25 first, but there's like a bunch of different swap machinations there. They also own a 2026 from Houston or the Clippers. They'll be getting. They have too many picks for me to go through. They have a 2027 first coming from the Clippers, but they also may have to send out. I think that one might be a swap. Yeah. So, but more of the story is the Clippers don't control their own first round pick, I think, until 2030. Yeah. So that's hot because even if you're willing to move on and recognize that like you're kind of just floating around the middle of nowhere right now, you have to get enough stuff back. Like the Knicks trade for Mikal Bridges. If you're the Nets and you weren't trading Mikal Bridges or you weren't getting your own picks back from Houston, the Knicks were at least putting enough on the table where you could think about it, right? Which team is doing that with Kawhi Leonard?
Yeah, I think it's the answer is nobody. I think there are nobody's putting the Bridges package on the table. That's for sure. I think I agree that it's a hot take, and it's probably closer to like a bold prediction that has like that 20% figure attached to it, if it's even that high. But it's just I get hung up on this all the time, thinking about say Atlanta of like, oh, they should trade Trae Young. It's like, well, what's the point? Like unless they trade him to San Antonio and get those picks back, it's like, well, yeah, okay. The perfect scenario is to get your own picks back so that your pick is valuable. But it's like first round picks are still first round picks. Those are still assets if they're coming from some other team, as long as they're not these, the Washington and Detroit ones from the Knicks, for example, or whatever, that have all these protections. They're going to be seconds. Like, yeah, the best outcome is getting your own picks back and getting control of your draft and by extension your like future. It incentivizes you to lose. The next best thing is just getting someone else's. It's not nothing. It's just because you can't get the best thing doesn't mean it's a bad call to trade a guy that you're on the hook for 150 million for, who won't play 150 games over the next 3 years. Like I think the real issue is like, and I think you're right. I don't know that it's going to make sense from a value standpoint to trade him because, when he's healthy, he's still great. And maybe that matters. And I just don't know outside, like Oklahoma City is someone I can really talk myself into. If they're just like,
talk yourself into it, but that would be so out of character. And also just, so you're paying Kawhi, or do you envision a scenario where they pay all four of those guys, their core guys?
The argument you'd make is like, they'll just deal with it until his contract expires. And it's kind of a Toronto situation where it's like, we're just happy to have him here for as long as he's here and then he's gone, but you can't quite do that because they got all these other obligations.
I have to interject there though now. So let's just say that either that scenario is open or maybe some team is putting a Godfather offer on the table. Give me the list of destinations that Kawhi Leonard can be traded to, at which he won't immediately retire after getting traded there.
Yeah, that when I was coming up with this, that was actually the first thing I thought of was like, well, he specifically chose the Clippers because he wanted to be in a certain place. And if you're an acquiring team, you just cannot have any level of confidence that one, he'll want to be there, or two, just like give you, I don't know. I feel like he's always played hard wherever he's been, but like you're signing up for some real difficulties potentially because like he just wanted to be in LA and that's where he is. And does he want to be anywhere else? Like so far, it doesn't seem like it.
Would you do everything the Lakers could offer if they put Austin Reeves, their 2 picks, their 3 swaps on the table, and then their salary to balance out? Would you do that? Wow.
Yeah, I would. There's no tomorrow.
Would he play in Sacramento?
Oh, how are they doing?
You're not giving up Keegan Murray in that. I wouldn't anyway.
Well, the Kings fans aren't either.
Do you use DeMar DeRozan's salary?
Yes. Well, DeMar DeRozan wants to be in LA too. It's perfect. Somebody gets to be in LA. Yeah, I mean, if I'm the Lakers, I just do it. Let's take one crack at it, and we'll just sweep up the ashes when it's all over in a couple years.
Could you see Miami doing it? It would have to be just all their picks and swaps, which isn't many.
How do you get to the number without it being Jimmy Butler? I guess it's like Duncan Robinson,
Terry Rozier, Tyler Hero, 2 of those guys help you get there.
Yeah.
Would you give up if they put Jaime Jaquez on the table in that?
I mean,
do you know what would be an interesting dark horse? I don't know if he would go there, but Atlanta, they don't control their next 3 picks.
You may have heard.
So like, are they just like doubling down on now with Trae and Kawhi?
I mean, it's weird because like I'm not having this conversation or not putting this hot take out there if not for the knee stuff right now, because it's just like, oh, the Clippers can't go down this road again.
Oh, first of all, you should be. If he wasn't healthier, it would make more. If he was healthy, it would make more sense to move him.
I just think they're so reluctant to trade him that it would take something like them just being like, okay, we're not doing like year 6 or 7 or whatever it is of hoping he stays healthy. But it's like but maybe it'll work for us situation for the other teams that are like, we just need the 1 year. If you're the Lakers or the Heat, 2 good examples that say, throw caution to the wind. Let's try to win a title this year. Kawhi plus LeBron and AD, or Kawhi plus Jimmy and Bam. Like, you're in the conversation at that point, right? Like, at least hypothetically until he gets hurt. But I don't know. Somebody else could talk themselves into it. We should move.
Toronto might come back calling and seeing if they can get for
like, we're already expensive. We might as well just do it again. All right. You are correct. My hot take for the Lakers does include JJ Redick. This will probably be a shorter discussion because it's pretty niche. I think he's going to lead all coaches in technical fouls. Hot or not?
I would say that's not hot enough because I feel like the disdain that he would show during broadcasts lead me to believe that perhaps the Lakers have given him some sort of mandate, or he's been talked, like maybe the coaches association talked with him or something, that, hey, you have to rein it in.
Mhm.
I don't think that's hot enough.
Yeah.
I could kind of see it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like anytime you're predicting someone will lead the league in something, it's like a little hot because just statistically they probably won't, unless it's like Luca and usage rate. But just the obvious arguments are like it's a highly pressurized situation. He's hyper competitive. He has like had no issue mouthing like anybody that's ready to go back at Stephen A. Smith like right away, like right the second they're on TV is like clearly not concerned with like decorum or what the norms are. I just think, you know, you're right. It's not hot enough, but I thought leading the league in something would get me there.
I'm trying to think of what would be. You think he'll like lead the league in the average amount of time it takes him to use his challenge, where it's like the first 3 minutes of every game, he's just so frustrated he's throwing his
He's
challenge out
so
there.
annoyed. I don't know. It's interesting. Like he is making an effort to always cite like some of the analytics is so loaded, but like when asked what the starting lineup was going to be, is like it'll be the one that went 23-10. Like, and you know, because the numbers say that's who he's not saying because the numbers say that's who it should be, but he does seem pretty like more to a greater extent than most coaches to just like point to the stats and say like this dictates the correct decision. So the challenge, I don't know, like I'll bet you they've had conversations or he has about like what is the actual optimal strategy like mathematically for your challenges, like what types of plays should I use it on, what's the success rate on these plays, when in the game does it make the most sense statistically to do it. I'll bet you that he's had those conversations.
Do you think a bolder one would be like the Lakers rank in the top like 5 of like cuts, like possessions finished off cuts or something?
Yeah. Or like Anthony Davis does finally shoot 6 threes a game or something. But
what about Bronny making all rookie? That wasn't
that would be a hyper bold prediction. All right, you want to move to Memphis? I got another one here. Man, all my Memphis takes are getting just ruined by the injuries. I'm sticking with it, even though he strained his hamstring and is going to miss 3 weeks. I think Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to finish ahead of Ja Morant in MVP voting. Not prepared to put like, oh, he's going to be 7th and Ja's going to be 15th or whatever. Is this hot? Is this not hot? Is this like, who cares? Because the Grizzlies are clearly going to just miss a million injury games again.
I think it's hot because Jaren Jackson Jr. is not like the billboard for durability either. So if you want to push back and say, well, is Ja going to play in enough games and Jaren Jackson Jr. gets there by default? The idea of Jaren Jackson Jr. just getting MVP votes at all is like a pretty big deal, because I in that conversation, I'm not even calling anyone out. We're probably guilty of it too. You're just going to gravitate towards people whose identity at least encompasses like 60% of it is off. It's just like Giannis is a great example because he's most valuable probably on the defensive end, but his numbers are just so ridiculous on offense. And Jaren Jackson Jr., even though he's a better self-creator, I don't know that his numbers are ever going to be, they're never going to be Giannis's, but are they ever going to be high enough to where the thing that he does best can then amplify those up into the MVP discussion? So I think it's hot, but I don't think it's too hot.
Yeah. I think the logic, obviously, this is again before the hamstring news, which just again was like, oh, right. he has a hard time staying healthy. Like the way he would do it is he's defensive player of the year again, or like real close to it, or, you know, is in the conversation all season. Memphis has a top 5 defense and the numbers show that like, oh, he's the reason, which is like, yeah, that maybe should be the expectation if he's healthy. And then all the gains he made offensively last year are, you know, I don't think it's realistic assuming the rest of that roster is healthy, which by the way, it's not. Vince Williams and Gigi Jackson are already hurt. Like if he's maybe less volume, but still holds the gains in isolation scoring and all this other stuff. And the other thing is we've seen him be a really valuable volume 3-point shooter. It's kind of like if the pieces all come together, which has always been the case with Jaren Jackson. It's just like if all of these highs that he's shown us in various categories, like coalesce in one season, like that guy's an MVP candidate. Like he's a top 10 MVP guy. Like that season is in him if all the best little components of his game happen at the same time.
You kind of basically just described if Evan Mobley shot 5 3-pointers a game.
A little bit, right? Yeah, maybe that's the guy we should have pointed to. Could he be a Jaren Jackson type? Yeah, similar.
I think that's a good hot take. I mean, the injury is just a bummer, but I mean, John Morant's probably going to miss 3 weeks at some point
Right.
too.
He's only
So
got to beat out one guy on his team.
I don't
So
mean to laugh at injuries. That is something I will never. I might, be snarky about a player's durability, but I don't want anyone ever to get injured. I like watching these players and the Grizzlies. This is anecdotal. I'm sure there's data to back. Last year, there's data to back this up, but they just feel more snake bitten than like any other team in recent memory. To where it's okay. The Clippers is an example. It's this one dude. It's Kawhi all the time, and Paul George was sprinkled in. But with the Grizzlies, it's just equal opportunity. You're fucked. Like it kind of just
and it didn't even wait till the season started. I'm gonna have to revise like all of my Memphis is gonna just kick everyone's ass this year takes just because apparently they're the unluckiest team on the planet.
I am up, which means that we go to your Miami Heat. My hot take, Grant, Khalil Ware will finish the season as a starter next to Bam Adebayo.
You're asking the wrong guy because I kind of want him to. I've dabbled with thinking he should start as a starter to begin the season.
Start as a starter.
He should just be in the first unit. That would be the hot take. I think it's hot because it's a rookie, and the Heat, at least at this point, seem like they didn't trade Jimmy Butler. They're not going to extend him. It doesn't seem like, but this is a team that has 2 really good players. It's going to try to win. They're hoping Tyler Hero's healthy. Like Terry Rozier gives them a full season. So for a rookie to crack that first unit that's like a big deal. I just like him so much that it's hot, but it's not like, oh my God, Dan, you're out of your mind. Right. Like he's the player type that makes sense if he is what he kind of looked like in summer league.
Do you know why it's hot?
Why?
Because I think he's going to start because Bam gets traded.
Do you? Okay.
No, I don't think that. I don't think that.
We need to discuss that hot take.
No, I think honestly that the Heat, do you remember a couple of years ago, they were talking about before he got injured, Omer Yurtseven playing with Bam Adebayo.
Mm-hmm.
And then like we saw them kind of try the Kevin Love stuff. I think that they've kind of, even though they haven't necessarily played that way, they've had a bunch of like undersized 4s or maybe more traditional 4s at points. I really think they want to try playing big with Bam Adebayo. And last year, maybe that impetus has kind of declined because Bam was he's always been so good defensively. Let me make it clear. But he was playing in drop more. Cooper Moorhead wrote a great piece on it, I think in March on heat.com. But like, he was like using every defensive coverage possible in like at the max possible volume while spreading it out. So maybe because that Bam can kind of handle not that you didn't think he couldn't handle it, but because he excels as the traditional rim protector in addition to doing all the other stuff on the perimeter, that you're not as inclined to try it. But I really think that they've wanted to and just haven't found someone hasn't been healthy enough, or when they've tried it, it hasn't worked out. And so it leads me to believe like, well, why wouldn't they try it with Khalil Ware? And I can kind of see it working out because both of these are guys that can really work on the perimeter. And so it makes them a little bit more interchangeable.
Yeah.
Offensively, you really do need Bam to kind of channel his Team USA spraying from the corner self, but that's not impossible.
Or I was going to say it's a bet on one or the other. You don't need both. Just having a serviceable 3-point shot at decent volume. That Bam is probably the more likely, but didn't Ware shoot over 40% his last season in college? And it was low volume, but it's like, I don't know, maybe he's the one that can get up, 2 or 3 threes a game and make, in the mid 30s. Like that's probably enough to justify it given the gains you would have in just athleticism, size, defense. I do agree. I think the Heat want something like this to work. But for a team that if it's struggled on one end or the other the last few years, it's been on offense. And it could be a short leash if it's pretty clear that neither of them, Bam or Ware, can space. But I think it's hot, but it's like, you can kind of see that this could be something they explore for sure.
We are up to my Milwaukee Bucks. Anyone who's watching on YouTube saw a spoiler twice because I'm not doing well with the little graphic that we made put up there. So my hot take, Grant, is 2 of Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez, and Bobby Portis Jr. get traded. At least 2 this season. Now, you know why it's particularly spicy? They can't get traded in the same deal since the Bucks can't aggregate salaries.
Well, go on. You can talk about all the other restrictions too. You got to match salary, can't take back more than you come.
I guess technically, if they were making a deal, I don't know what that deal looks like, but you could send 2 of these guys out together as long as you finish underneath the second favorite after the fact.
Which, if you're doing that, then you're thinking about fielding Giannis trade offers because he's pissed if it's a cost savings.
My logic here before you go into it is I think that all three of these guys could be free agents. I don't know what's going to happen with Chris Middleton. He has the player option. They are even the front office has kind of started thinking in bigger picture terms when you look at the amount of roster spots. I don't view any of them as blue chip prospects, but look at the amount of roster spots that are just taken up on kind of these younger, unproven guys. I don't know if it's going to be in the name of draft equity because maybe you think you can get away with not having Bobby Portis, or if it's just, hey, we kind of need to reorient the roster. And honestly, when I'm looking at it, I kind of hate saying this, but I think of the three, is Brook Lopez the most valuable to this team now? I normally would have always defaulted to Chris Middleton because that dude is a bucket in the postseason, which is a big deal.
Well, man, so you've piled another hot take on for me to evaluate. I think Lopez just gives him stuff that nobody else can. You could have said that about Middleton, but the couple ankle surgeries, the injuries piling up the last couple of years, it's like, are you counting on Chris Middleton the way you can count on? Like, Lopez had the back issue, and then he's been incredibly durable the last 2 years, even though he's older. So like, I think it's fair to say that he might be the most valuable. I can't decide ultimately if this take is too hot just because of how functionally difficult it would be to trade these guys, or not hot enough. Because you could go farther and say, like, they're going to trade Giannis. Because if you trade both of these guys, Giannis is like, I'm out.
I'm sorry. You're not trading Giannis midseason. That was just like, that's an off-season thing if it happens. My whole point was, I'm predicting this because I don't think that they're going to punt on the Giannis window. And I think that you can move these guys and not, like, you can hope to renovate. I don't know if you can't necessarily say it would be a guaranteed upgrade, but maybe it's a renovation that changes just the complexion of the way that you're playing. I kind of bandied about, though, doesn't it feel less hot to say they trade Damian Lillard than this?
Yes, I would agree. Just because, like, what I was thinking was like, okay, if you're restructuring, as you put it, like, who are you getting back? Like, if you trade Middleton or Lopez just in a vacuum, it's the type of trade a team makes that, like, oh, we need to get younger and more versatile and flexible and cheaper. It's like, I don't know who you're trading those guys for that bring back more present value. Short-term
Wiggins,
value.
Moody, and a first-round pick.
Well, Wiggins is going to be a positive value contract, so I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, that's interesting. More likely to trade. I think probably more likely to trade Dame, because you could just imagine, like, well, one, he's not part of this core, so I guess it's easier to move him for that reason. But two, like, you could trade him to Miami for stuff, whereas, like, I don't know that you can do that with these other two guys.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you could get Hawkes, and then it would have to be, I guess, Terry Rose. I mean, honestly, I don't mean to say this because Damian Lillard's going to be better this year. People are like, oh, he's getting older. Like, he was missing wide open threes last year. That's not a thing that's going to happen. But if you're the Bucks, I wouldn't make this argument. So I want to make this clear. Could you talk yourself? How much worse are you? You remove Damian Lillard, but you add Terry Rozier or Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, and Jaime Jaquez.
I mean, you're definitely more interesting and deeper.
Deeper.
And then, man,
by the way, there'd have to be another team involved here because these are both favorite teams.
Right. So. If you think Lillard is going to be closer to the guy we'd seen, in the 10 years leading up to last season, maybe not. Like, maybe you're not better. And I know you're saying, like, you're not sure either. Actually, you don't think so either. But, like, if what you get is last year, or you get last year minus whatever percentage of fall off you would normally assign to someone Dame's age, small guard alert, by the way, like, don't age well, then it's like, yes, please, let's get three other guys in here that can give us some shooting, diversify a little bit, easier to move if you want to really strip things down too. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm putting a super soaker filled with 2 years old ranch dressing to your head or to your mouth.
That's weird.
Would you rather? I didn't want to use where,
sure.
I'm a gun toting.
Right.
But so I honestly, would you rather have, I don't know what the other machinations are, Tyler Hero and Jaime Jaquez on the Bucks or Damian Lillard?
I would rather have Dame.
I think I'm with you.
until I get more information on like, is he falling off or not? Right. Like, but it just like, if it's today right now, it's like, no, I'll take Dame and the
I do
upside.
think, and this is, I don't mean to insult Dame. If anything, it's a comp for me. It's a compliment to Chris Middleton, to where if you told me that Chris Middleton was just going to be healthy in the playoffs, it's like, you have Tyler. Like, I could kind of talk myself into now, because there have to be other players to, like, you're probably looking at a scenario where I don't know what the machinations end up being, but like I don't even think the money might work between, because what is Tyler Hero at now? Is he making $30 million?
It's right around there. It was like 4 for 120 initially.
But you could, like, Tyler Hero's good enough at generating his own looks that you could say, well, if we're getting Jaime Hawkins, we're also reloading with picks, and Middleton's going to be healthy. I think I want to see more of the Dame Giannis pairing, which is why I didn't go that route, because I don't think, even if they do make that decision, I still think that's more of an off-season thing than a trade deadline thing.
What if you could just have Drew Holiday? Do you think they could ever get him?
I think it might be time to move on to Minnesota Timberwolves if you're getting
all right. Dan, I think that Naz Reid is going to be the Wolves' second leading scorer, and I am fully aware that they just traded for Julius Randle. What are your thoughts?
That's too hot. I just don't. So is your prediction that Julius Randle's going to get retraded, or just not play a bunch? Like,
that's a factor. I think that the more I've thought about this trade, the clearest, best way for it to work is for Julius Randle to not start. And I don't think Julius Randle is likely to warm to that idea. And factoring in also that the more I've thought about this trade, the more it does feel like, we initially talked about it, I was like, what percentage of this is financial? I'm like increasingly convinced that the financial component is a big deal. And Randle was just like, yeah, we'll take that back. Despite him saying he feels wanted here, like, I don't think that's a well-founded belief. So I think Reid is going to be able to not do a cat impression, but give you 80% of it. That's kind of my take initially when we talked about the trade. I think that's totally totally plausible that he just can do a lot of what Cat did offensively from the shooting perspective, from like he's a second option type thing. And I think the Randle trade is in play, and I don't see any other candidates beyond Randle. So I think like that's kind of where I'm coming from.
By the way, I think that's how we get our answer with how financially motivated it was, where if Julius Randle opts out, do they just let him leave, or does he get traded again and broken up into smaller contracts? Because he's not necessarily, by the way, who is paying Julius Randle $30 million a year in free agency?
The same people that are going to give Brandon Ingram a $200 million extension.
It's not that these guys aren't good. They're just such specific fits that are tough to build around in larger contexts or fit into already established contexts. I think that's way too hot, just because I do think you start Julius Randle and you see in theory how it goes. Like, the idea of just like taking the ball out of Anthony Edwards' hands to get Julius Randle going downhill and he can kick out, not the worst idea in the world, unless you think that Anthony Edwards can't catch and shoot threes and space the floor in that context, which I think we both believe that he can. And also what you could do is you start him. There's staggering patterns where the Wolves all of a sudden probably have one of the more dangerous second units in the league, where if you're kind of building it around Julius Randle, not coming off the bench, but leading these bench units that might include Naz, Dante DiVincenzo, and then Nickeil Alexander-Walker as like, that's your 4 setup. And then maybe it's, do you give Rob Dillingham a shot in those, or you just like, is there another starter in there? Jaden McDaniels. So I think that's way too hot, because I do think even if you're making this trade for financial reasons, kind of the crux of it is we need someone else to put the ball in their hands. And Julius Randle is very clearly that guy, more than Naz Reid is, who, yeah, he can generate his own offense, but he's not going to set up a ton for everybody else.
Would you agree? No. And maybe you've kind of brushed up against this. If contracts weren't a thing, and like reputations weren't a thing, and like ego and player expectations weren't a thing, that the best version of the Timberwolves has Julius Randle playing on the second unit with DiVincenzo and Dillingham as like, I'm going to lighten the load on Dillingham. We have DiVincenzo as like the spacer and the like fireman, and Naz Reid is the starter, just so you preserve not some semblance, but you get better spacing out of the first unit with Gobert. Like, do you think that's the correct basketball decision if you remove all the other variables, which obviously we cannot, because those are huge factors?
I would probably lean towards yes, but I'm closer to, now that we've had like a week to marinate on this trade, not being sure, because are you going to get enough aggregate playmaking out of that starting five then beyond Anthony Edwards, because Mike Conley's getting older, and it's okay. Yeah, the playmaking's there, but when it's not also coming with the same level of like kind of shot making off the dribble, what does that do? And that's what just makes this trade so fascinating.
Right. Well, because you're giving up, if it's Randall, you're giving up spacing. If it's Reed, you're giving up playmaking. And it's like, well, this offense was 17th last year. So you can't really give up a lot and expect to get better, but there's a sacrifice either way.
But there's a sacrifice, but you have to answer your question. Who's more likely to check both of the boxes of playmaking and spacing the floor?
Yeah.
Julius Randle or Naz Reid? And the answer is Julius Randle. And also, I think, and I don't know if this is the correct terminology for it, but he has more on-ball gravity to where defenses are. He shot 31% on threes last year, but like they are going to react to what he's doing with the ball in his hands. And probably even definitely in ways that they wouldn't to Cat, but also in ways that they're not going to Naz. I don't mean to like denigrate Cat in that way, but so I still think I'm at least trying it with Julius Randle in the starting lineup. And by the way, that's the pathway to also justifying like, even if it was for financial reasons, that's the way that you're able to hide behind. No, it wasn't. He's starting.
That's bad motivation. I mean, maybe it wasn't, but like if that's your concern, that's like you're in a bad place.
Isn't there a chance? I don't want to belabor this trade, but isn't there a chance that this ends up being kind of the KCP trade for the Denver Nuggets? Not that Minnesota wins the title, although maybe they do, but okay, you did cut costs, but like it wasn't, I don't even want to call it a side benefit, but it was dual beneficial because KCP ended up being not just important, but he upgraded your championship stock. There is a scenario where Julius Randle, maybe he's shooting 38% on catch and shoot threes this year or something. Like there is a scenario where this works out and it ends up making you a better team. I think I said in our semi-immediate reaction, I think the Wolves are worse overall from a playoff perspective. That's from having watched Julius Randle in the playoffs. Yeah. And so like that is still, that's honestly more than Julius Randle's regular season fit. I'm like, can he have a good playoffs? And that's where, so I understand what you're saying. I think everything under the sun is in play, here, which is why this trade is so intriguing.
This trade is, I can't remember one that was so that I've kind of like, yeah, I could see it from this side. And like, now I love it from this side. And now I have real questions. It's just like everything. I can't remember a trade that I was more excited to see play out on both sides, like in actual games than this one. Cause it's just like, who knows?
Two contenders doing business with each other, one trying to address weaknesses, the other doubling down on strengths.
Yeah.
It was just so fascinating.
I got another one, Dan. For the New Orleans Pelicans, I think Zion is going to average over 1 block and 1 steal this season. 9 guys did that last year, which we're talking about like defensive statistics and Zion Williamson, not something he's known for. And I'm saying he's going to be one of, fewer than a dozen guys that pulls this off. I'll explain the rationale, but how does that strike you? Just offer it.
So 1 block and 1 steal.
Yeah. Something 9 guys did last year, all of whom are noted very good defenders.
I think that's appropriately hot just because Zion's never averaged like 0.7 blocks was a career high for him last year. So you're also kind of so if he's healthy, he does play over 30 minutes a game. So you have that going for you. You know what really gets me is the blocks, because it's how much time I keep getting this from Pelicans fans, by the way, and it's aggravating the shit out of me. Zion's not going to be the center. Well, Zion's going to be like the de facto big. And yeah, you might have Herb Jones doing a lot of the stuff and other people like around the basket. There are going to be, look at the makeup of this roster. There are going to be moments where Daniel Tice is not on the floor and Zion's your primary big. I'm not saying he's a center. I'm going out of my way to say Zion is the lone big. Are you going to tell me Herb Jones or Brandon Ingram or Trey Murphy's your big? I just, sorry, that them and Kings fans with deciding DeMar DeRozan's defensive rating are just getting out of control.
Boy, that's a thing. I'm glad I'm not.
We can talk about that when we get to the Kings, but so not pinning everyone with a broad brush. It's never everyone when I'm saying fans in general, but I think this is appropriately hot because I'm having like last year was his best defensive season of his career and he averaged 0.7 blocks, but the fact that like there were other bigs on the court with him to where I just think by default, he's going to have to do more of the center stuff this year, like the traditional big man stuff. So I think it's appropriately hot.
I think the other component of it is that's a lot of it is just like, if not him, who? Like he's just going to be in the position to have to do a little more of this stuff. I am drinking a little bit of the hopefully sugar-free Kool-Aid on him like, yeah, he might really be in shape. And like, he might really like,
He was
this
in
might
shape
really,
last year, and he still got
well,
hurt.
right. It's like, but I think the combination, I don't know. I'm a sucker. I am buying almost all of the like, like for example, when Luca, I think Tim McMahon, somebody described Luca at media day as slim, and I was like, oh, it's over. Like I just buy it. I'm so easy to fool with the like best shape of his life stuff. I'm sorry. It's like I
No,
should be better than
this.
this.
I'm sorry. I almost think you're not giving yourself or Zion enough credit here. I was doing my MVP ladder the other day, and if you just told me that Zion was going to play in 70 games, I might just put him in the top 5 based off what we saw last year, because I understand that availability is a skill in itself, but look at the defensive improvement he made last year, specifically away from the ball. And I would like to provide a rebuke to the people because in my mind, I'm just like, he's really not contesting shots around the basket, and you're not going to like trust him to block jumpers. So how does he get to that block per game? Do you know how he gets to a block per game, Grant? Here are the leaders in shots contested at the rim per game for the New Orleans Pelicans last year: Jonas Valanciunas, Larry Nance Jr., Dyson Daniels, Herb Jones, Zion Williamson. Of the top 5, the three players in the top 3 are all gone.
Right.
That's how Zion Williamson. So who else is contesting shots at the basket aside from Herb and Zion right now? You want to say Ingram, Trey Murphy, Tice? Okay, fine. But like, no, on Ingram and Murphy. Sorry. No, like they might do some, but like to just say no, like, yeah, they're going to do more of the rim protecting than Zion. It's just, how much is Daniel Tice going to play? Are you even going to see it at many of the other bigs? Maybe they make a trade and that's how it doesn't get there. But I just think the way that they're built right now, he might get there by default.
Yeah, right. Default. That's the right way to, it's like, it just, no one else can do it. And like, he may or may not be able to, but he's going to be asked to, right? For long stretches.
I still think it's a hot take because I think that they will try to insulate him against doing that as much as possible.
Yeah.
I'm up, and we have the New York Knicks. I struggled on what to settle on for them. I'm ultimately going to say I think they will still have a top 10 defense. My other one, Grant, was that Karl-Anthony Towns will rank in the top 10 of 3-point attempts per game. He's never ranked higher than 17th. He's only ranked in the top 50 of 3-point attempts per game twice, which just feels I blame him for that. I think more than anyone.
Get him up, man. What are you doing?
But so here's my thinking. They have OG Anunoby. They have Josh Hart. They have Mikal Bridges. They have Deuce McBride. Even Precious Achiuwa coming off the bench. Mitchell Robinson, I assume, will at least play at some point this season. And so if you have him going up against second units or even playing with Towns for stretches, like the defense there should be fine. This to me is more about Karl-Anthony Towns himself. I think after being very critical of his defense for years, and even for part of last season, I thought he was very good overall defensively. And I think what it might come down to more with the Knicks is how much is Tibbs willing to deviate from kind of his base principles. And I think we've seen enough flexibility from Tibbs over the last 2 seasons or season and a half, whatever, that I think we'll see more of Karl-Anthony Towns just going to be defending at the level. And maybe the Knicks are going to do more switching. Maybe we're going to see a lot of scram switching, like trying to scramble out of mismatches even before they happen. I thought Karl-Anthony Towns did good, like was good there last year too. And I think part of that is, well, do you have the personnel to make that work? And I think the Knicks do. Like when you look at the perimeter guys, like if you're having to rely on making these reads to be aggressive or switching. Now, the Jalen Brunson of it all makes it difficult. But I trust that, like, okay, well, some of the non-starting lineups, even if the starting lineup is basically offense first, but even look at the starting lineup, and there's 3 above average defenders in there, 2 of whom are just super elite, that I think it probably comes down to, do you think this team is going to be healthy enough? And that's, OG always kind of missing time, knowing how much time Mitchell Robinson is going to miss. So that's where I think the risk is caked in here. But this is, to me, it's more about my belief that, no, if you're putting Karl-Anthony Towns in a deep drop, do I think that he is going to be the anchor of a really, or do you want to funnel guys to him? No. But I think that the Knicks have the ability to play differently. And part of that ability is, I believe Tom Thibodeau is more flexible than before. And I believe that Karl-Anthony Towns is better defensively than he was even a year ago, let's say. So I'm going to say the Knicks will still have a top 10 defense overall. And again, I will reiterate, part of that can be some of the non-base lineups just might really anchor these high. Think about the Knicks, where a lot of the times, like some of their best net ratings were just being propped up by the bench destroying everyone. The starting lineup sucked, but the bench units were so good. They had these elite rankings overall.
I think it's hot. It's a hot take as measured against like what the knee jerk public reaction of the idea of Towns being your defensive anchor would like create, right? Like, cause I just think, and it's not like Randall was a great defensive player and like you lose Hartenstein. So that's a big deal. And Mitchell Robinson, who knows, December at the earliest, whatever. So I think the normal thought on it would be like, they're just going to be worse, but it'll be worth it because of the offensive gains. Right. But I can see it. I do think like you look at how the Wolves performed with Cat as the center last year. And it was like, I guess I'd say it was surprisingly good, but it was just good on defense. It's small samples, but like how different really supporting cast wise in terms of defensive quality is what the Knicks have compared to what the Wolves have had with Cat last year. It's like you got your McDaniels and you got your Edwards and you got Gobert. It's like, well, you got Anunoby and you got Mikal Bridges. Like that's not nothing. And you've got some wiggle room between 6th and 10th if you're just trying to decide like how much better or worse are they. So a little hot as compared to like public perception, but I'm with it. I think I agree with you.
Wow, you agree. So it's not even that it's appropriately hot. You're willing to
I would go there with you. I would get out on Hot Take Island on this one with you.
I mean, and by the way, if they're top 10 in defense, it's kind of just, does that mean the trade worked out for them then? Right?
Because you would just assume they're going to be top 10 on offense, like pretty comfortably, right? Because
I mean, if they're not, we got horribly wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a title contender profile, which they are. So that checks out.
I'm glad you're on the same page as me with that. But let's get to the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Yes,
I mean, let's get to we messed it up.
Back. You want to go
the
back?
First alphabet.
All right, I got the Thunder. We're going back to the All-Star well here. Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren are both All-Stars this year. Now, Williams, I think, is probably
wait. Before you get to justify it, so you've now predicted Jamal Murray, Jalen Williams, and Chet Holmgren are all going to make all. Who are these? How many of these players are dethroning other players in the West, man?
I just think Devin Booker's washed, and nobody's going to vote for LeBron or Kevin Durant. It's a new time.
Steph's just not even a consideration.
Yeah, no, he's done. He's 36. He's aging. You said it. I don't believe it, but you said it. So I think of the two, Williams is the more likely just because like there was some buzz for him last year. So it wouldn't be a shock if he just took like another step forward. Honestly, a lot of this I think this is not the hot take. I think the Thunder are going to be so good as a regular season team that we will be in a position where it's like 2's not enough. Like SGA is going to be an all-star, like unless he's hurt. And then you got to give him another one. So really it's just how does Chet get in there? And he's going to be like a top 5 defensive player in the league. He's going to shoot 40% from 3. He's going to take a step as large as the one J-Dub took in his second year. I'm beyond in the bag for this team, which again is not a hot take place to be because everybody is. But
wait till we get to the end of this exercise.
Okay. If the Thunder are who I think they're going to be and who a lot of people think they're going to be, this is just a team with 3 all-stars. And so, yeah, your point is right of like, who's fallen out of the all-star, family for these two.
This one I think is appropriately hot because I think that they might just be undeniable, as you said. But the other aspect of it is you're now like Shea, we already know will just make it because he's one of the 5 best players in the NBA or 7 or whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
These two guys can get in as front court members. And I think that gives you some more flexibility because you're looking at it and it's like, well, Rudy Gobert is not guaranteed to be in there or Julius Randle. The Timberwolves are on my brain right now, clearly. And it's LeBron is older. What if he's just not playing in enough games? I have to imagine LeBron will get in and you would have to imagine Anthony Davis gets in, but it's not outside the realm of possibility. You'd have to imagine Wemby gets in, but it does feel like there's more. And yes, Sabonis and Şengün, there's Zion, there's a ton of front court talent. It just feels like when you're trying to name 2 new entrants, if you had to ask me whether that needs to come in the front court or the back court, I mean, there's 3 frontline spots in the starting lineup. So there's more flexibility there. Right. And then you have the wild card of it all, of course. So I think it's appropriately hot, mostly because I'm in the bag for these two as well. It's just funny when kind of combined with your Jamal Murray take. Grant is predicting the downfall of a lot of these, just not older heads, but the current regime, apparently.
My other prediction is that the all-star rosters will expand to 50 players each. And then, then we got no problem.
I think that's appropriately hot.
Thank you.
We move on to my Orlando Magic. Actually, I can't take ownership of them because I'm mad about their offseason. How about this picture up on screen? What do you think?
Great. Where do you get a blue rim?
So, right? First of all, you should be allowed to have different color rims. Would be a lot of fun.
Why not? Come on.
It probably something with like just perception of it, I would assume.
Home court advantage.
I mean, like, yeah, we have these baseball stadiums where it's just like all these different lengths of the field. Does it like
And if you can make your in-season tournament floors like look like an acid trip, why can't we mess with the rims?
They should test it out during the in-season tournament games, multicolored rims.
Get Adam Silver on the phone. We need like tie-dyed rims in Portland for Bill Walton. Like we could do all kinds of great stuff.
And by the way, I feel like that would help. That rim stands out more than just kind of like the orange brown.
Why's the net got to be white? What are we doing with the nets?
Let's get chain net. Oh no, that could actually hurt somebody because these guys are actually athletic. I'm thinking of myself who like can't even touch the. So anyway, my initial prediction was hot take was that the Magic were going to trade for LaMelo Ball or Anthony Simons. But I'm actually going to go with, I think Jalen Suggs is going to win most improved player. He's going to be, because he will improve the most.
Oh, right. Sorry.
So they've already talked. Maybe this is me, sipping Kool-Aid in training camp. They've talked about him handling more of the traditional floor general responsibility. And there's a level of, that's not revelatory. There's a level of, well, duh, you decided not to add anybody who could do any of that for you. And I think a lot of people are like, well, Anthony Black could do more. And it's, why are they playing Anthony Black a ton more minutes when they just got KCP? I know they lost Fultz, but you have KCP. I look at Jalen Suggs, and he improved a lot last year. I think is just a shot maker from beyond the arc, decision-making on the ball. The question for him, and I think the playmaking is there. He passed better out of drives. Kind of the full floor vision is good. If this team could get out in transition a proper amount, you'd see his playmaking tick up, and maybe they will this year. You have to go back to the half court, slow things down. Do you want him running a pick and roll? He averaged, Grant, in the playoffs last year, 0.33 points per pick and roll possession.
Is that good?
So, yeah, it's high. I mean, it's higher than 0.32, right?
Yeah,
so I think he can get there because the spacing should be a little bit better enough. But I just look at him, and he has gotten better. And it's I don't know if he's, well, I shouldn't say I don't know. He's not going to be making like the Luka Doncic, LeBron level type of reads or throwing these one-handed skip passes. But in terms of just like if the Magic are healthy and they set a ball screen for him and he's not going downhill with a full blast of speed, I think he's gotten better at kind of I call it the directionality or the jiggle joggle of being on ball, where it's, you're not just making these super direct or predictable beelines. And I think there's more variability there from him as a scorer and decision maker. It's, can he get there as you're like kind of anticipating these passes? I think he can. And then it's not just about the passing. I just feel like this is someone, and I guess it's not being talked about at all, but are we sure that Franz Wagner is more important to the Magic's future than Jalen Suggs? Honestly.
No.
Okay, good. But so this last year, he averages 15 points, over 15 points per 36 minutes, over a block per 36 minutes, over 2 steals per 36 minutes, and 5 assists per 36 minutes. Like the list of players who have just done the same, Dwayne Wade, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, like that's Clyde Drexler, Ron Harper, and that's it. And so I'm in the bad for like, as a guy who can kind of fill it up from anywhere, and we know is just going to have like this. And sorry, he was sub 5 assists per 36 minutes. But my point is, I think he gets to 5 assists per 36 minutes. And so, or I would even say, so what does he end up at with per game last year? He was at like, what was it? 3? Oh, he was under 3, 2.7. It just wouldn't shock me if the assist total doubles. And so we're looking at someone who's averaging 20 points, 5 assists, and then has the counting stats of the steals and the blocks. And we know he has the reputation of an all defense level defender. So I think he's going to win most improved player. And I think it will be driven by the fact that we will see him improve multiple levels on the offensive end, playmaker, scorer, that whole nine.
I think it's a hot take. But the way you end up being right is maybe partly like the whole year late on it thing, where it's like he actually had a real most improved case last year, and like everybody catches on this time around. And just the idea that now I think we got to talk about like the sheer rarity of the shooting leap that he made, was like how like insane it was for him to become like a massive liability, like under 30%, right? To 40. Like he just, the leap I love how I just throw out like, I think it was this, and then you have to go look it up.
Went from, so year 1, 21.4%, year 2, 32.7%, and then year 3, 39.7%.
So that's, I mean, insane. But so that cuts both ways. Like one, well, he's going to regress because that kind of leap is just ridiculous. And that makes most improved hard if you regress at anything. But then it's like, well, why are you betting against a guy that has gotten so much better already? Like it's a J-Dub argument. It's just like, why would it stop now? He's just like, clearly he's someone that works at his weaknesses and gets better. So it's a hot take, but I believe that it is appropriately hot for in just because like, maybe there's another factor too, as I'm thinking of it. Like Orlando has bet on organic growth before and been right. And like they just didn't go get a playmaker. And it could be because they think Jalen Suggs can add that to his game. And that's another, and they'll be right about that too. Like why, like that's not a crazy thing to think. So hot take, just because it's hard to get better to that degree twice. But I do think like if you're going to pick somebody to do it, someone like Suggs is the right guy.
Right. And I think the pathway, like if you were trying to dilute the pathway down even further, it's there's no 3-point shooting regression. And he leads this team in assists or finishes second behind Paolo Banchero. And that is, that's a huge jump then. Because I mean, even Paolo Banchero led the team in assists at 5.4. And so it's not like if you put the ball in someone's hands more, it's not outside the realm of possibility that there's a new team leader in assists per game. And at this point, I feel like I think there'll be people with differing opinions here, and that's fine. But it could be Jalen Suggs. Now, it banks on a ton of improvement, but it's kind of the whole point of most improved player.
There you go.
We are on to the Philadelphia 76ers. Do you know who that is on screen, Grant? I just want to make sure.
Yes, I do know. He is a former NBA player who was a very good French national team contributor who is an NBA player again.
Oh, he also blew past the screen. I apologize. Why aren't I? I'm getting really bad at this. Look, there
he
goes.
He also has huge muscles.
Huge ash, too. Nice job to him. Him and Ty, like on the same team, just crazy. So I'm going to predict that it's kind of, by the way, it's kind of spicy to come up with like real hot takes for the Sixers, though we actually have one that I thought was a great one from a subscriber. Anyway, Gershon Yabusele will start more games than Caleb Martin or Kelly Oubre Jr.
That's real hot. I'm going to need you to lay this out for me just because I
get a properly sized 4. And maybe I shouldn't throw Kelly Oubre Jr. in there because he could start technically as a 2 if you really wanted to. So I think Yabusele starts more games than Caleb Martin. Like maybe let's stick it there because you're not going to start Caleb Martin as like you're not going to start Caleb Martin, Yabusele, and Paul George. So I look at it as just like who is the 4? Yes, Caleb Martin and Paul George, you can have them do that. And I guess if you want Kelly Oubre Jr. to do it and KJ Martin before you inevitably trade him, and that would be probably the pushback too, as well. They're eventually going to make a trade and maybe they get a starting 4. I just feel like their depth has been a little bit overblown to where it's like, if you do start Caleb Martin, it's all right. Like, what are we looking at with the bench really now? And so, yeah, you could stagger, but I think that maybe they won't start like this, but we'll get to a point in the season where it's, well, we want the body of Yabusele out there to just like kind of handle, especially against certain matchups. You might just prefer if you're going up against Boston and they're playing 2 bigs, or what if the Knicks at some point are starting Karl-Anthony Towns and Mitchell Robinson? They're at Cleveland, Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. The list goes on. I mean, so Orlando, even Paolo Banchero and Wendell Carter Jr. So I just think for the body type that he has, and just like knowing that you want to maximize your bench minutes while also insulating, I would argue, the amount of reps you want to see Caleb Martin and Paul George, let's call it guarding up. Like, who else is the answer here if it's not going to be Yabusele? So by the way, this was classic. What is the spicy thought on the Sixers?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Cause like it wouldn't be, just to create some contrast, it would not be a hot take to say Yabusele is will not be in the rotation like in December, like that, because then you'd be like, yeah, all right, I could see it. So that's why this is a hot take. It's a little hot for me. Just, I mean, if you've been out of the league, I don't ever feel great about you starting a lot of games, but like your point's well taken. Like he does address something and kind of balances things out if for depth perspective. So good hot take. It's skewing a little hot for me.
That's the first one I think you've said of mine that's too hot. I had your Jamal Murray one I just dumped all over. And there's this one for me. So
now I'm looking back. I think the 2 of Middleton and Lopez getting traded and Portis getting traded, I thought was a little hot. But again, I don't know what hot takes are.
That's fair. I don't know what hot takes are. We're like an hour and 50 minutes.
Here's one. Got a hot one, Dan. Phoenix Suns. Either Kevin Durant or Devin Booker will not finish the season on the Phoenix Suns.
Here's why that's not hot enough. Oh, we're overdue for a Kevin Durant trade request. It's been over a year.
About that this morning.
I think that's hot because it's You go through all the, it's just one of those, for you to move them, one of those guys has to demand out. And even if, let's say, okay, Devin Booker is an example, in raw, like maybe he has the equity built up with the organization to ask for a trade and they'll give it to him. You look at his contract and he doesn't have that leverage. Kevin Durant might. So things would have to be going exceedingly poorly for them to.
Do things have to go exceedingly poorly for Kevin Durant to be unhappy, or can he win 2 titles and make a third finals and still not be happy?
Okay, well, which
hypothetically
player on this team is antagonizing him?
Listen, he was unhappy before Draymond Green attacked. No, can I police my own hot take? This is too hot because I actually
I think we got the Kevin Durant trade request already, and they figured out to work around it. Just because, do you remember when Woj tweeted that Houston was targeting Kevin Durant and Devin Booker in the equation? It's like, that didn't just come out of nowhere, guy.
Nope. Yeah, that's right. Well, now it's definitely going to happen. But I actually have been leaning much more towards like the Suns are going to be a monster this year. I'm
that's
starting
not hot enough. So you have one.
Right. That's not a hot take, but in terms of like what I actually believe versus I need to come up with a hot take for this team. Like I do think that, like, if you said the Suns won 62 games, I'd be like, I could see it more so than like Kevin Durant's. But this is what Kevin Durant does. Like, or like something goes really badly and it's just like, we got to trade Devin Booker. We're stuck. You know, like Kevin Durant like falls off or gets hurt, and then Bradley Beal's not available. And it's like, we got Devin Booker and, you know, whoever we put together on the minimums.
If that happens, we're just penciling him in for Houston, right?
A billion %. Yeah. Like that's the move.
I think you went 2 different ends of the spectrum where the Suns are a monster isn't hot enough.
Not my hot take. That's just what I actually believe is the
too
Suns
hot.
be a monster. Yeah.
So I would say, like, is there something in the middle? Can Devin Booker finish top 5 in MVP voting, or
would it be a hot take to say, no, I don't want to do that. Would it be a hot take to say like, we will get another
Bradley Beal win 6th man of the year?
Monte Morris outproduces Tyus Jones. That would be too hot.
What about this one? The Suns will trade their 2031 pick by the trade deadline.
Shouldn't that be the expectation based on how they're operating?
I guess, but just like, well, yeah, I mean, they did sign Josh Okogie to that contract. So you'd have to like single out a player. The Suns trade for someone who closes games for them in the playoffs.
Yeah, because then it's like you got to trade like Nurkic probably to get anyone.
But isn't that the same thing? Because you're not trading your 2031 pick for someone who won't be closing games for you. So I kind of just said the same thing without.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's move on. I don't know. The Suns are going to be a monster, but might also
trade to say Devin Booker gets more MVP credit than Kevin Durant. More MVP.
No, I think yeah, like that. I mean, Durant's going to slip at some point. You know, like it's going to happen.
When?
Well,
this dude had an Achilles injury.
I just said, Dan,
one of the 10 best players in basketball.
Yeah, I don't know. All right, let's
be a hot take. Oh no, here I think this is a hot take.
What?
The Suns will be better on the defensive end this year than they were last year when they were 12th.
That would be a hot take.
I'm about to say, I don't believe it.
Yeah. Now we've moved straight. I don't understand what hot takes are, but that's not one.
Actually, I have a legitimate query about this team.
All right.
When you look at Tyus Jones comes, I'm assuming we know he's going to start, and I'm assuming he wouldn't come if he didn't think he was going to have the opportunity to close games.
Yeah.
So if you're closing games with Kevin Durant, like are Tyus Jones, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant all just locks as part of your crunch time 5?
I mean, if they're not, what's happened? Like what is?
So then is that your like the defensive one?
I mean, I guess Royce O'Neal might be the guy, or even like that's the guy, or Grayson Allen. I guess like would be someone else, or it's not Nurkic, and you play Durant at center against certain matchups. Like, but I guess probably Tyus Jones came over thinking like I'm going to start. And I don't know if they would have made promises. You can't really make the promise of like, we're going to close with you, because that's always like dependent on so many variables. So yeah, maybe that's not a lock.
Do you, cause then it's, I mean, you could argue though, like, would Bradley Beal not be closing some games? Is that
if he's not closing? What are we doing like that?
Okay. So how about we settle on this? The closing time, Kevin Durant at the 5, quote unquote, at the 5 receives more crunch time minutes than Yusuf Nurkic.
That would be a hot take, I think. But like,
I think I believe it. I think I believe it too.
Well, then I don't know. Is it? Yeah. Okay. Then that's a prerequisite. You have to believe it. So that's kind of better than my trade one. I like that one.
So that's appropriately hot?
That's appropriately hot. Yeah. You believe it. And it's like, I don't know, that might or might not happen. Most people probably don't think that. Okay, here we go. This was a hard one. I didn't know what to do for Portland. And again, it's already like, do I believe this? But I'll make the case. I think Portland could finish ahead of at least 3 teams in the West. So we eliminate the usual suspects, which for them is like,
nobody.
Who is that? Because they're predicted to be so we satisfied one hot take criteria, and that most people do not agree with this point. The way it happens is, I think the Clippers over under has already fallen like below 40, and like they have blow it up. We've talked about a Kawhi Leonard trade. Doesn't mean it'll happen, but it's there. Utah, like they're the only other team in the West that's like could really has steered into the skid in the past, just not for a full season. So, and they've got the security of like, we got Markkanen locked up. That's okay. We like don't need to worry about too much there. So we can just be bad. We can let Keontae George, Taylor Hendricks, everybody play. So they could be below them. Then it's just like there's a mystery team that needs to slip. Probably not the Spurs. I think people would nominate them. But between like the Lakers, the Warriors, who else am I missing that could be like, oh no, they got old and bad fast? Like there's got to be.
I think the Pelicans kind of have low floor potential. If Zion gets injured, what happens there?
So I think you've got like 2 legit candidates in the Clippers and the Jazz, and then you just need one of these. There's always going to be somebody, right, that just falls apart. Like who's going to be Memphis this year? Like that's an extreme case, but like it might be Memphis again. Like Memphis might be Memphis. I don't know the way things are going. That's not off the table. Well, so too hot, you think?
No, I think that's appropriately hot and you want to know what makes it? I think you could sit there and say that's too hot. But we don't actually know that the Blazers would lean into the skid if they're not skidding. Look at the talent on this roster,
side of it, right? They're good players.
They're stacked. They're not stacked like, oh, they're going to be. They're like every single position. You're like, well, how are you going to? There's always. It feels like there's going to be an odd, like the bigs or the wings or the guards. They have so much talent. So I think that's appropriately hot. I was going to throw to you. And I think this would dovetail with would they steer into the skid? They have the potential, I think, to be an above average defense. Just like
they can put lineups out there for sure. Like you've got Tybal and Kamara, like that. That's a start, right? And then
Jeremy Grant. I thought Shaedon Sharpe got a little bit better last year. More importantly, I think you have Robert Williams III. There's we tend to have this idea that rookies aren't good defensively right out of the gate. I do feel like over the past few years, it's kind of been like Evan Mobley comes in. Asar Thompson comes in, Victor Wembanyama comes in. That feels like anecdotally it's just not as true anymore. And so if you're asking someone to just come in and protect the hoop, Donovan Clingan could do that.
I was going to say, what if Donovan Clingan gives you a Walker Kessler rookie season where it's just like, oh my God, this guy's like a top 5 rim protector.
Kessler's another one. And then Denny Avdia is now on this team, which is also kind of, he's young, but and I know they had picks in 2029 to spare, but you just gave up a lottery pick for him. So it's kind of just like, there's an element of, I don't think where it's the Bulls, I consider it damning and franchise malpractice. I don't necessarily understand what Portland's end game is here, but I don't hate it as much, that undefined destination for them. So I think that's an appropriate amount of hot. A lot of it probably comes down to, though, like will Scoot or Shaedon Sharpe kind of make that leap to where, okay, they both need to be healthy. I thought Sharpe showed some stuff last year, but when you play in 30-something games, those guys are going to be so central to what this team is doing that if they're bad, that it's kind of like, okay, like what are we doing there?
They definitely, like to a really extreme degree, because of all the good players we just mentioned, like they're in control of this. And if they don't want to be like the, third from the bottom or fourth from the bottom, you just, who wants Jeremy Grant? Who wants Anthony Simons? There's going to be no shortage of suitors for a lot of those guys.
You know what the other thing is too? I do feel like in-season trades are harder now because of the aprons. What's fascinating, this is really galaxy brain. I'm calling my own point fascinating. It's fascinating me at least. Is that you could say, well, like, why wouldn't they want to trade these guys? Some of the names you mentioned, all of them are under contract beyond this season. Right. And if the Blazers are somehow, I know this is stupid, but like 11th or 10th in the West, I mean, if they're 10th in the West and made the play-in for sure, but like, it's because those guys played well and were probably healthy. Their trade value has then increased.
Yeah.
Look at someone like Jeremy Grant, less time on his deal. Everyone's freaking out about that. But like, if Ayton has a good season, he becomes more valuable as an expiring contract. Anthony Simons, he has value right now, but he'll has value as an expiring contract. So it's just, there almost might be like, yeah, you don't want to finish 11th, but it's just the lottery odds are flattened anyway. So this team could be 11th or 10th, and maybe they win a top 4 pick regardless. But you could look at this and say, well, no, they'll make trades because they have to make trades. And it's, well, couldn't they argue that if they're trying to maximize the value of the players who are most likely to be traded, that having a better than expected season, not just half season, is the way to do that?
Not only that, but the other side of are we just talking ourselves into the Blazers, by the way? I feel like like, think about this.
We're going to end this. Grant's like, yeah, I think they could get to the Western Conference Finals.
Right. Well, I don't know. I like, so if you're in that position, right, where typically we would say like teams don't want to be here, where it's like, we could finish 10th, right? Like that's possible. Like we could do maybe 9th. Maybe we'll get, what about 8th? We could get 2 cracks at a play and win. Like, if you're in that sort of, you're not like way down at the bottom and you're the Blazers, you look at the roster and say like, yeah, we could trade these guys, the Jeremy Grants, the DeAndre Aytons, the whatever, but it's like, we sort of already have. And if you are that good, chances are someone like Scoot and Sharp and whoever else have like played pretty well, right? Like, or at least not been damaging. You look at your roster and say like, we kind of already, we just drafted Klingon. We haven't seen a lot of Sharp. We believed Scoot was a franchise altering guy. Kamara's not old. You'd be like, we kind of have the young guys already. So like, are we going to trade Jeremy Grant for more picks? I mean, like in a vacuum, yeah, you probably do that, but it's like our young core is sort of here. And if you are in this hypothetical position we're talking about, it's like, well, clearly it's pretty good because they helped us, not be the worst team in the conference. So like that pushes against selling off even more. Like in addition to upping the value of the vets, it's just like, we got our guys. We're just going to give them this experience in a playoff setting. That'll be valuable. We don't need another top 5 pick. Like that's
a great point.
It's like a possibility, right?
I'm sorry, I sound so shocked. Like, well, Grant made a really good point. Wait, so this isn't hot enough then?
Yeah, maybe we need to say they'll make the play-in. I don't know. We probably should relax a little bit, but they got some. I mean,
they're stacked. The word
they feel like a team we would normally criticize for not picking a direction. But like, actually, the case is they can kind of have it both ways, which feels unfair to the teams we criticize for no direction. But like, I don't know, they got a bunch of young guys. Like, how many more do you need? Like, I don't know. It's a weird thing.
I do this thing, every year at Bleacher Report, and some people don't get the bit, and it's just very funny because it's very obvious that it's a bit, but it's basically why your favorite team sucks. But it's for every team. So I'm writing about why all 30 teams suck. So like, understand the bit. I provide nutshell cases for people who hate reading, where they're like 1 or 2 lines. My nutshell case of the Blazers was having concepts for loose outlines of unfinished blueprints for a plan isn't something about which to brag. And that's it. You're right in the sense that we would normally criticize teams that don't sort of have this clear-cut direction, but with the Blazers, and I hadn't even thought of it in these terms, it's just, if you think you already have your guys in place, which some people might say, did you see the season that Scoot just had?
That's a pretty big if, but they could believe it still.
Yeah. So, man. So, yeah, come up with a different hot take. You just provided like the most lukewarm take.
We just got to move it up to the play-in. This is a little hotter, I would say.
Oh, I'm about to someone's going to get lectured. I don't know who I'm lecturing someone at large at some point in this, but it's going to happen.
All right. Malik Monk will finish the season on another team.
Yeah, I mean, you have. Sorry, I was going to say I'd probably say that's appropriately hot in the sense that, given how quickly he re-signed, it either showed that he really wanted to be there, or he kind of understood that the market was going to fall out. Where it was, if Orlando's not going to go after me, then who?
Right, and there's that component of it, and there's just the like, we've beaten it into the ground, but like the Kings are just over-indexed on like guys who need big minutes and deserve them, frankly, that are kind of on ball first type of guys. Right. And it's like the roster's a little unbalanced, and that's true. Even if Keegan Murray and Keon Ellis are just like great defensive players, which probably like, and I think Murray has done enough to suggest like, yeah, he's just a good defender and might get much better than that.
Great defender.
And Ellis has, in small samples, has been like, oh, that guy's causing some trouble out there. I want him on the floor. So even if those guys are both, the high end of what we think is possible for them, you still just have this thing of like, Well, DeRozan needs the ball. He doesn't space. De'Aaron Fox deserves to have the ball because he's awesome. Domantas Sabonis, his value is mainly on the ball because he's such a good passer and he's so unselfish and he sets all these screens in the handoff game and this, that, and the other. And then like Monk is an awesome six man who like would start for a lot of teams and is a huge like piece of the closing puzzle. But that's four guys. So it's just like I'm almost like, is this even hot? But like they did just sign him. So it's like, do you trade that guy? I don't know. He's the piece that I think they'd be most willing to move of those four on ball dudes. And I think like, the problem with it is, and maybe this is why it's hot, is if somebody really wanted Malik Monk, they would have just signed him. And why are you going to trade for him now?
You would have needed cap space to do that. So if you didn't have cap space,
I guess I'm just talking about Orlando mostly.
By the way, I do think it's appropriately hot because I asked Greg Wissinger when we did the Kings look ahead about this thing. Is there a chance that Monk, everyone's talking about, Kevin Huerter's salary. I said, is there a chance that Monk becomes, I don't want to say trade ballast because he's not empty salary, but like someone who's traded because you have DeRozan? He told me no. Mm-hmm. So I would say this is appropriately hot, but I'm with you on everything you said. And also he's young enough to where it's not, if you're trying to trade DeMar DeRozan as an example to like a team that's rebuilding,
it's a limited number of suitors for someone like him. Monk is like, I mean, he's in his prime. He can really score. He can run an offense. We'll take him at a good number too.
Yeah. And so I think this is appropriately hot because you do have to, if you're trading him and you're not making like the person coming back, I think if you're trading Monk, and maybe this is dumb to say because you have Keon Ellis and Keegan Murray. So maybe your closing lineup's written in stone with DeRozan, Sabonis, and Fox. But I would say if you're trading him and you're not getting a clear like sixth guy who could be a part of some of your closing lineups, that's where it gets tricky. But we're also not talking about someone who doesn't space the floor or is a big. So it's like if you need a wing or just sort of a bigger perimeter player, I don't know if I would flip him for a rim protector. If that rim protector is like kind of a 4, maybe I'd consider it. I think that's appropriately hot. Yeah, I was surprised you didn't go with DeMar DeRozan makes all defense because he had a better defensive rating.
Like a good defensive rating.
Shout out to all the Kings fans who have found the defensive rating column on Basketball Reference or NBA.com or whatever it is. It's not an individual stat, but I appreciate you all trying to tell me that the defensive rating proves that DeMar DeRozan's a better defender than a Barnes. This is not all Kings fans, and the Kings fans that I care about, like, or the ones that I interact with on Twitter for the most part, they've gotten in on the joke. But I'm amazed at how many people are just penciling in DeMar DeRozan as a defensive upgrade in Sacramento. He's an upgrade. He's a talent upgrade. That's not for dispute. That is indisputable. You can't come, and all they will cite for me is defensive rating.
If you're citing individual defensive rating in a serious way and thinking that like ends the conversation, I'd like to welcome you to 2011. Glad you're here. Congratulations on making it. Like that's like beyond. Oh, anyway, let's move to the Spurs. This probably isn't hot enough. I think Victor Wembanyama is going to be in everybody's MVP ladder in the top 5 by mid-November, and he will not fall out of that status. Like, I just think whatever how many different times have we just like half jokingly hyperbolized about him? Like, I think I used undeniable for Reed Shepherd. Like, he's going to be truly undeniably good where the numbers are like, he can't be outside of the top 5 in MVP. Like, he just can't.
So, by the way, I'm staring at the picture I have of him on screen. I don't know if I'm just looking at it too hard, but doesn't it kind of look like that's NBA 2K? I mean, like, it doesn't look like a real person anymore.
It kind of looks like he just like conquered a country, and he's posing for the statue that they're building outside his palace. That's what it looks like to me.
So I think that's probably, honestly, I would say it's appropriately hot to too hot, because you could look at it. So Luka Doncic, I think he finished 9th in MVP voting as a sophomore. LeBron finished 6th, I believe. So it's just like, we have a track record of, okay, guys can finish that high, but there's still, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Like, how do you view it in the MVP discussion where, let's say the Spurs have like a +10 net rating with Wembanyama on the court, but they're -30 without him. Yeah. They're not going to win enough games for him to be in the discussion. And I shit on people, like subtweet them while talking or whatever we call it, throw shade. I don't know how to reconcile that. It's like, well, how much I understand the impetus, like, well, the MVP should come from someone on a top tier team, but how much do you penalize someone for what's happening when they're not on the court? Right. Doesn't that sort of make and there's been an uptick in this, is we want guys who are on great teams, but they make their team so much better because their teams struggle without them on the court. That's not going to be Wemby. I don't think that the Spurs are going to win enough games to put him in the top 5 of the MVP ballot. Like, we're talking about, like, just to run through some names here. So he has to finish ahead of at least one of Luka, Giannis, Embiid, Shea, Tatum, Jalen Brunson, Anthony Edwards,
Jokic.
Jokic. Fuck Jokic. Is he
I was
even
waiting
good?
for when you're going to get there.
John Morant, and look at like kind of the other story, like John Morant, if the Grizzlies are good, like if they are just all of a sudden the 3rd best team in the West again after that gap year, he's going to get a bunch of credit. I think that makes it the appropriate amount of hot, because I think Wembanyama will be good and impactful enough to do that. But this idea that we've gotten to a point where I'm not even just saying that voters are okay with it, but that it is okay in general to have someone so high up in the MVP discussion who's not on a team that's above, like, are the Spurs going to be, if they're above 500, it's because they won 42 games. So if you're saying this, and I'm not saying that you're saying this, if this is your take, I think you also have to believe that the Spurs are going to win at least 45 games.
I think I think realistically, it's like, remember when Westbrook I was going to reference him for another reason, but like, what did the Thunder finish 6th the year that he averaged the triple double?
Didn't they win 47 though? Wasn't that the year?
Yeah. And it was just like, can we give this guy the MVP? And the answer was like, yeah, I think it was the wrong answer, but the answer was like, yeah, the numbers are just like, how do we not, right? Like but he also had all the crazy clutch stuff where it was like, no, he actually did just win them games that they shouldn't have. So like that win total was like, oh no, it's like extremely attributable just to him, anecdotally, because he won them this game and then this one and this one, in addition to the numbers. I just think like the Jokic argument of like, look at the on off, and like the Russ argument of like, look at the box score numbers, and we'll combine with like the hype machine and the possibility that the Spurs are actually like close to good enough as a team, that it's just that we're going to get like not that far into the season where we just have to kind of like throw our hands up and say, like, I don't know, like how do we not, like how do we not have him in the top 5?
It would actually be, could you see people viewing it as like, it doesn't matter because he's 5th? Not like obviously finishing 5th, where this really isn't going to impact it. Like maybe if it's in the top 3, for instance, like this could change things if it's a really deep MVP landscape or it's up for debate. But if you're throwing him 5th, it's like, well, he's not going to win anyway. Who am I actually impacting? That might be like the strongest argument.
Right. It's like the Tatum Booker zone, where it's like, we have to put him here. He's not going to win, but we just got to put him here to just acknowledge, like, let's keep a record of history to make sure everybody realizes. But with him, I think the numbers are just going to be so extreme that it's like something a little different than like the obligatory Tatum, Brunson, whatever MVP, that level of MVP.
We are on to, it's my turn again, the Toronto Raptors. So it won't be a long preamble, but it deserves a preamble why it's hot. Anyway, Scotty Barnes will average 25 points and 8 assists per game this year. And now I'm going to tell you, Grant, why that is hot while man, I'm getting really bad at the screen things. I apologize to anyone who's watching and having a seizure while seeing it. So 25 and 8 when you're 8 before your 25th birthday is rarefied air. The list of players to do it is, this is ridiculous. Luka has done it 4 times. Trey did it 3 times. And then Oscar Robertson, who I am, by the way, doing shorts, Robertson did it twice. I call him Oscar Robinson, or it sounds like I do, so many times, and I don't understand why.
I would correct you, but I think I have become immune to it because you do it all the time.
All the time.
I don't
as if I don't know who he is, which I guess is fair. But I obviously know who Oscar Robertson is, but my pronunciation is so bad. It's my nasally voice. I'm really saying Robertson, but it sounds like Robinson.
All right. You're absolved.
Scotty Barnes is going to average 25 and 8, which doing so before your 24th birthday, only Luka, Trey, Oscar Robertson, Tiny Archibald, and John Morant have done.
I like the approach because those are some names. I'm worried. I feel like it might be too hot, only because like, isn't Quickly going to have the like? I don't know. I'm stuck between too hot and like appropriately hot. It's not an issue where I don't think it's not hot enough. If anything, it's too hot. So what's your just he's just going to be that much better, and the playmaking burden is huge, and that's how he does it.
That's how he does it. But okay, so Emmanuel Quickly is going to have the ball. Who else is running the offense?
Jakob Poeltl at the elbow, baby.
All right, Jakob Pertl, RJ Barrett, maybe Bruce Brown if
Right.
he's healthy. But realistically,
Yeah.
Bruce Brown probably gets traded at some point midseason, assuming he's healthy. You're not going to want to run too much of your offense through Jakob Pertl. Do you even have the spacing to do that? So I'm just looking at it from, I think he's good enough. I want to make it clear. I think he improved enough last year, basically every part of his game. And I just think the usage, like the opportunity, I'll frame it as, for him to, because who's going to be the better off-ball option? So let's look at their core lineups. Emmanuel Quickley or Scotty Barnes. I think you'd prefer to have Emmanuel Quickley off the ball just because of his own shooting.
Yep.
So I think, I mean, I can't say it's not hot enough, but I do think the opportunity is going to be there, that because Scotty Barnes is so skilled, it'll be within reach. And it really comes down to, I mean, to me, what do you think is more likely, that he averages 25 points or averages 8 assists?
Huh. I mean, eight's hard to get to, I feel like, for a non-point guard, although he's kind of gonna be that.
He was at 6.1 last year.
Yeah.
He was at about 20 points and 6 assists. So that's a huge, he probably wins most. I know I picked Jalen Suggs to win it, but if he's at 25 and 8, he probably wins most improved player.
And that'll be another one where it's like, this guy had it last year and just didn't play enough, so we got to give it to, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's going to be a delayed MIP thing. You're right on the border of too hot for me, because that's crazy. 25 and 8 for a forward, unless you're LeBron, which even, like, I mean, yeah, he struggles to do that, like, in his prime. That's just so many assists. That's a good one. I'm not gonna say that's not hot enough. It's some degree of appropriately hot.
Well, you still didn't answer the initial question, is what would you feel is more likely, hitting the 25 or hitting the 8?
I think he's more likely to get 25, just because even though that's a bigger jump, the 8 is like, that's just, I don't know. It's so dependent on other guys. And it's like, if one of your questions about this team is like, who other than Grady Dick is going to make shots? Like, I don't know. Some of those assists might be hard to come by. So I think I guess 25. I mean, they're both going to be tough to get to. Obviously, historically, they're really hard.
That brings us to your Washington
I
Wizards.
got him, huh? All right.
Yeah. Oh, Utah Jazz. I already skipped the alphabet.
No. Well, because I don't even see your Washington one coming up, so you're gonna have to vamp, I guess, or freelance that one.
Oh no, I already know it. I guess I just didn't put it in our handy dandy spreadsheet.
Okay, well, it'll be a mystery to me. I think the Jazz are going to make a win now trade that sends out at least 3 future firsts. How is that going to jive with Portland not finishing below them? I don't know. I didn't think about that.
It's funny that the Jazz and the Blazers are both like in the top 10 of the West. It would be hysterical.
I mean, stranger things have happened. So this is another one where it's like, I don't think they should have the degree of confidence that they have their guys like Portland does, which even that's a little iffy. Certainly not to the extent like OKC did a couple years ago. But I do think there's sort of a confluence of events where the Jazz have a trillion picks. There just seem to be a lot of guys. I've got trade requests on my mind. And so I'm thinking about like veteran guys that might ask out. And feels like there's kind of a lot that could plausibly have that, like Jimmy Butler, or like obviously Brandon Ingram could be someone that is available. And it's just like going down the list, like how much, like Utah clearly doesn't want to tank. They just sort of have done it when they realized they needed to. And so combining like their preferred way to go forward with Danny Ainge's opportunism, with the glut of picks they have, with the possibility that they already have a bunch of young guys, it just seems like it's maybe this is why it's a hot take, is it's like somewhere around a coin flip for them, that they just suck on purpose, which they have not wanted to do, or they just say like, fuck it, let's go get somebody at good value that's worth 3 of these future firsts, because we got 1 million of them. And by the way, since the ones coming from Cleveland and Minnesota are going to be in the 20s, like who cares anyway? So I just think, I don't know if this is one where it's like, do I believe it? Maybe.
You know what you kind of just described? They're the Brandon Ingram team.
Maybe that's, I mean, I think like there'll come a point where somebody's going to say like, this guy's actually good. Like we should get him and we can afford to pay him because we have like one other big contract on the books. And is it a buy low if you get Brandon Ingram for like 2 of those first? I'm saying 3. So I'm obviously aiming a little higher. I don't think you give up 3 firsts for Ingram. But
that's right. I forgot about the 3 first element.
The 3 first is a lot. That's why it's hot. It's just like, oh my God.
Jimmy Butler to Utah or something?
Right. That would be a name. Kawhi Leonard. Why not? I don't know. You saw like,
you know what the name would be?
Who?
LaMelo.
LaMelo, sure. Or if it's like, what if you
back.
skew younger? What if you target a guy that's like the guys that haven't signed extensions that like may or may not like you're not getting. I don't think it takes 3 firsts to get like Jonathan Kuminga or something like that. But like you've got all this ammo, you can go target all these unextended guys and say like, we'll pay them.
So wait, I can't suggest players who cost less than 3 first-round picks, but you can.
Yeah.
So I think this leans towards too hot. I don't think the Jazz are going to let themselves like fall.
You're right.
Just like it's hard for me to envision after what we've seen at the past 2 trade deadlines. Your point though about them having so many picks, I would say though, they would have to be closer to Portland's situation in the sense that, and this is the one point I disagree with you on, where you kind of said like they have a bunch of young guys already in place. I think in Portland, you can make the case that there's 2 to maybe 3, depending on how you feel about Kling Kong. Shout out to our Discord for letting me know that's his nickname, by the way.
Great nickname.
The Jazz, I don't think you can point to anybody and say that dude is it among the young guys.
No,
and
I don't think they're, I don't think that they're at the level of Portland where you could like nobody should be like, yeah, Keontae George has it. Like he's definitely a cornerstone. It's like maybe, or Taylor Hendricks or whoever you want. Walker Kessler clearly is not someone.
Who's the most likely to become it? It's probably just Cody Williams by virtue of mystery box status.
Well, right? Yeah, the mystery box is so tempting. Like the less you know about a prospect, the more likely you are to say like he has this crazy.
Do upside. This. Rank these 3. August 4. Rank these 4 prospects in terms of long-term value or just ceiling. Keontae George, Walker Kessler, Taylor Hendricks, Cody Williams.
I know you want me to say Cody Williams, and I know you'll say Cody Williams. So I actually think if it's just long, are we talking pure upside? Because I think for me, it might be Hendricks, just as a pure upside.
That is the other correct answer. So nice job.
Yeah. There were 2. Awesome. And then it's I guess I go Williams second, George third, and then Kessler. Like I think Kessler has the highest floor just because we know he can be awesome at like a niche. Well, is rim protection a niche thing? I don't know. That's probably selling it short, but like he's not someone that's going to be like a multi-time all-star, but I think he could just be a starter for 10 years potentially.
Yeah, it's either appropriately hot or too hot. It's definitely, you're not in danger of it not being hot enough.
It's too hot. I'll say so. Like I don't know if I believe it, but it's like I don't know. The Jazz, again, I keep coming back to like they clearly don't want to just suck on purpose until they have to. Like they keep trying to be okay.
I mean, the coaching staff and the players, sure. I think the front office has thought that they were bad enough. And
right, maybe that's the issue. They like just thought they misjudged how bad they might be. All right.
Very quickly, here are a couple list of things that are more likely to happen than the Jazz making a win now trade. Are you ready?
Yes.
Will Hardy, their head coach, will receive a 20-game suspension without pay for conduct not detrimental enough to the team.
Yeah.
Drew Eubanks will start at point guard.
Mm-hmm.
Cody Williams will miss 6 to 8 weeks after burning the roof of his mouth while eating ice cream.
Do you have these like teed up?
I do. I came up with a list for why I hate your team. This one's too convoluted. I'm gonna read it anyway. I won't read. This will be the last one. I had a bunch. Injury reports before games will start to include ailments such as Taco Bell indigestion, bruised fingernail, morning pair of lost AirPods, and DNS, borrow DeAndre Ayton's gravel and Lego stuffed mattress. DNS stands for did not sleep.
You're working way too hard on a 30 slider, if that's what those are from.
Let's get to the Washington Wizards here. Is this how I honestly want to know what you're going to say about this. The Washington Wizards are going to have the worst defensive rating in NBA history. Hot or not?
Oh, I love an NBA history hot take. Okay. Man, it's going to be so hard for them to be good. I think that's a hot take because anytime you're all time in it, it's a hot take, but I don't think it's too hot. One, because you're probably giving a lot of minutes in the middle to Alex Starr, probably playing Jordan Poole. Kyle Kuzma is a passable defender. You're probably trading him. You might play Bub Carrington, a rookie, a lot. I mean, like, I guess maybe the other way to get there is just like, who on this team is, you traded Denny Avdia, like who's going to be a plus defender or even an average defender at his position? Koulibaly? I feel like he's just going to make a bunch of mistakes still. I don't know.
So here's the thing. So last year, because this is just and you could do it in comparison to the league average in that year. But last year, Grant, we had the 5 worst, so it means highest defensive ratings in NBA history, according to Basketball Reference. The Jazz, the Spurs, Oh no, I'm sorry, 4. The Spurs from 2020, 2023 were on there. But the Jazz of last year, the Hornets of last year, the Wizards of last year, and the Atlanta Hawks of last year had 4 of the 5 worst defensive ratings on record at Basketball Reference. And so the worst is from the Jazz of last year at 120.4. And I just feel like the way offense has gone, and you traded Denny Avdia, so you've gotten worse defensively to me. Unless you think Sarr is going to be good right out of the gate, and it doesn't even seem like they want to play him as a big man, like the primary big right out of the gate. So I almost wonder if this isn't hot enough, but yeah.
It's hot. I could see how you can get there though. Not too hot for me. I mean, the Wizards are going to be the worst at something. Just they're going to try. So
they've been the team that they're making they're going to make sure, them and the Nets. I think I'm most confident in. Oh, we know that they're not going to be, if they're too good out of the gate, they're going to do something to make sure that that doesn't stick.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right. You want to get to
All right, we've wrapped up our hot takes. Let's get to some listener/subscriber hot takes that were sent to us. There's like 14 or 15 in here of the ones that I thought did not overlap too much with what we were talking about. And then there was a lot of overlap. Anyone who sent in, we had so many for the Spurs and the Grizzlies and the Thunder for some reason. I found that the Thunder I got, and I guess the Spurs just being Wemby, the Grizzlies were interesting. Let's get to the first one. So first up, we have, as it comes on the screen, this is from the Kolche Kolev. The Spurs will finish ahead of the Clippers. I'm assuming they mean in the regular season standings, Grant. Hot or not?
It's a little hot. But I mean, you can see it, right? Like it just the Clippers fall apart. Kawhi gets hurt. James Harden demands to be traded. Like
it's kind of the logic you used a little. It's different to get there, but when you were talking about the Jazz being better than 3 teams in the West,
yeah, I mean it's totally plausible. The Clippers are all. If you're picking like a playoff team from last year to fall apart, everyone's picking the Clippers, right?
I'm trying to think. Yeah, are we missing somebody? No. Yeah, I think that's probably, I would say it's the appropriate amount of hot, right?
Yeah.
Next up, we have, it's a 2-parter. Another Spurs one. The San Antonio Spurs will win 45 plus games and make the play-in. This comes from B Rich in Discord, and the Spurs will make the playoffs on Twitter. Faux_Schmo.
I mean, it's hot just because 45 is a crazy jump from what did they win 22 last year, I think. So, I mean, that almost never happens. Houston improved by like 19, and that was ridiculous. But like, can you rule anything out because of Wembanyama? Like, and I don't know. It's hot, but it's not like, again, not unthinkable.
I think if you stop, if B Rich stopped at just make the play-in rather than including the 45 plus games, that I think this skews toward the 45 plus to me skews toward like, where are those wins coming from in the West? You just have to believe that Wemby's one of the 5 best basketball players of all time.
I don't know.
Didn't LeBron win like 46 games in his second season with the Cavs in the East? Like, is Wemby winning? I would have to see what the Cleveland's record was in 2004, but that's a really heavy lift.
Super heavy. That's why it's a hot take.
The Spurs making the play-in or making the playoffs by virtue of the play-in, that's not, the Cavs won 42 games with LeBron as a sophomore.
Yeah. I mean,
so
I don't know. Again,
I think it's hot. I think these are too hot for me.
A little bit.
Next up, I think we're entering our Grizzlies phase of the podcast. Oh no, still Spurs. Oh, this one's hot. Coach Pop retires from coaching by the end of the season. This comes from Miguel.
That's too hot. What's he want out? I mean, why does he want out with? We're not on the ground floor, but we're just heading up the elevator with Wembanyama. I don't know. I don't know what would have to happen.
He's not even 100 years old yet. Why would he retire?
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is, I think it's hot and too hot, which is like, that's the point of this exercise. Like, he really seems over the past few years that he seems reinvigorated. Like, he seems to enjoy the build of it all. Well, no, I said the past few years. They've had Wemby for a second. Like, let's
he was
chill.
reinvigorated by Blake Wesley. That's how you know you're into it.
I mean, he plays like human caffeine, so I could see that. The Rockets will get a top 6 seed in the West. This comes from Cosmic Raccoon.
That's not hot enough, I don't think. Do you?
You already picked Reed Shepherd to be unanimous rookie of the year or something.
I mean,
Well, I mean, go through the teams though. So who are your bona fide playoff teams in the West? You have Denver, Minnesota. Like you would be shocked if they fell out of the top 6 is my point. Denver, Minnesota, Oklahoma City, Dallas has to be in there, right?
Yes. Then what?
I think people would say Memphis, but just the injury risk alone there
I
is a
think
lot.
you got like Memphis, Houston, and then are we already in like the Lakers, Kings, Warriors tier of the
Well, how about
West?
the Suns?
The Sun, yeah, right. Okay, the Suns. So the Suns is 5. I would assume the Suns finish ahead of the Rockets, but then it's just like I don't know. Is it hot if it's like they're in the mix with like 5 other teams for the 6th spot? Maybe, but like why are the Rockets going to be worse? They were a 500 team last year. Like what you need to be 6th? Well, to be 6th, you got to probably get in the high 40s minimum, right? Just based on the last few seasons.
6th was 49 by the Suns last year. So we think the Clippers will fall out. So there's a spot open, but you're saying and I think all our 5 teams are right. Maybe there'll be a curveball. You're saying the Rockets will be better than all of these teams, the Lakers, the Pelicans, the Kings, the Warriors, and the Grizzlies. And then if you want to throw the Spurs in there too, since they keep coming up, I think that's the appropriate amount of hot because it's hot, but it's like, you're not prepared to guarantee any of those other teams will be better than Houston, are you? Maybe Sacramento?
Okay, I'll back off a little bit. It's hot, but it's like pretty low on the Scoville. Like if it's like hot ones or whatever, this is like the 3rd or 4th wing. I mean, we're not like nobody's falling apart here.
I like that one. I think it's the appropriate amount of hot.
Okay.
The New York Knicks will win the 2025 NBA championship from Andrew Abraham. Grant, is that hot or not? I don't think that's hot enough.
What are they got the like 2nd or 3rd best odds right now, don't they? Post cat trade. So like, I mean, it's just, I mean, if you frame it that way, then it's not, but it's like, so they're better than the Celtics and the Thunder. And they probably have to beat both of those teams.
Yeah, they might have to beat both of those.
Yeah.
It's hot. It's hot. It's the appropriate amount of hot, right? Because do you view them as a title contender or not? That's what this comes down to.
I mean, I do. I don't know if they're not favorites, but they're contenders. You know,
I will say, I think the teams, if you were to make your championship pick rankings of like who's going to be the most frequent championship pick, I think OKC gets more, Boston gets more. I'd probably say Denver would still get more. They're in iffy territory now. What about like the Timberwolves and Dallas?
So just because I still don't think it's outdated to say like there's just more really good title contenders in the West than the East. And so like, if you frame it around like, well, if you get to the finals by definition, like that's great. Just your chances are better. And you got to beat Boston. You got to beat Philly. Like, it's not going to be easy, but like, I think it's still just easier to get to the finals in the East than the West. So, I mean, it's a hot take, but like, it's not, I don't know. I think the Knicks are going to be like, if the Knicks are worse than 3rd in the East, like something like, oh my God, what happened? Right.
I think at this point, they'll probably be the 2nd most popular title pick in the East, but it's weird because I agree with everything you said, but like, I think that there are more teams in the West that people would pick to win the title if they're making, like, you're looking at Dallas, or I would say come up more frequently, even with the OKC of it all there.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Ja Morant wins MVP and Grizz win their first championship at Daniel Sage Poetry.
This is a hot take. First of all, because I said Jaren Jackson was going to be higher in MVP than Ja, so I have to stay consistent. No, I mean, I wish I don't know how I'd feel if not for the injuries that have already accumulated for them, but I was ready to just go all in. I still kind of am on the Grizzlies just being awesome. We just talked about how many good teams there are in the West, though. Like it's hot. It's real hot. It might be too hot.
I would say it's closer to too hot than appropriately hot, but it's appropriately hot for this. Like, if you want it to be a hot take, this is a hot take.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Ja, like, I guess they're kind of intertwined. If he's winning MVP, it means that the Grizzlies might, but yeah, good. They would be one of the more surprising teams to me to win it. I guess I just don't, the snake bitten aspect of their roster.
Yeah.
Well, this is like the counter to it, though. So, Grant, sit back, grab a cup of coffee. Okay. This is from Alan. Memphis is actually overrated, despite every NBA podcast saying everyone is sleeping on them. Everyone is penciling in Edey to be good right off the bat, on top of just assuming that the incredibly small stretch of games that Ja played are just replicable across the entire season. A team like the Wolves has already proven they have leapfrogged the Grizzlies to me. Not to say Memphis isn't going to be good, but they are getting glazed to a ridiculous degree currently. Again, because I like the in detail stuff here.
Yeah.
Here's my thing. Despite I don't know if this is hot enough because are people just assuming I guess I haven't seen much of everyone's talked about, are people forgetting about Memphis? But everyone also seems to me hesitant to be like, Memphis is going to be really good because of everything that was just outlaid.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's less about can Ja be good across a large sample size, more so of can he stay healthy and available across that. The Edie of it all is fascinating, though, because I do like for all of what he does really well, and he could be everything the Memphis Grizzlies need next to Jaren Jackson Jr., he is still a rookie. We did also just talk about how rookies, it feels like anecdotally, they are better defensively, like some of the higher end ones. So I don't know where, but that's a fit. Like we're just penciling in Edie, as Alan says, like he's going to play a huge role. Are we sure it's going to be that he's going to make a positive impact while doing so?
Yeah, I mean, like, show me the lie here. This is too sober and well reasoned of an opinion to be a hot take. Like, this is just like, yeah, you're probably right. Like,
yeah, God damn it, Alan.
Alan, too good of an argument, so it can't be a hot take.
Next up, that was such a good one. Well, that was too good of a one. Next up, from Matty L, LeBron James and Anthony Davis will not meet the 65 minimum games played and will not be eligible for end of season awards, therefore blowing up the Lakers season.
Again, this should be the expectation, probably. Like, if you had to bet on it, you wouldn't bet on either of them playing more than 65 games. I wouldn't, would you?
Well, I know that we've had availability issues with both. How often do both of them not appear in 65 games, though? It's basically, I guess, just that's a question for LeBron. Just because, like Anthony Davis, we'll just pick a year and is he there? So,
yeah,
in 2022, 2023, LeBron played in 55 games. How many did Anthony Davis play in that year? I'm assuming it was probably less. So, I actually think that this might be the appropriate amount of hot. We're just going to assume that both of these guys,
having it be both is a way to get it to being a hot take. But for me, I don't know. I'm
what
still hung
happens
up on like, you wouldn't be surprised in the least if this is exactly how it went, right?
No, so both of them did not play in 65 games in each of the previous two seasons or the equivalent. So I still think I'll say appropriately hot.
I think it's hot, but it's barely hot just because you've got two variables in there that you have to hit.
Thank you for the submission, Maddie. Discord user Maddie. Oh boy. Oh, this is fine, Grant. From @DoNots on Twitter, there will be 13 teams with 40 wins in the Western Conference. I'm assuming they don't mean 40 exactly because that would be wild.
That would be what an exciting. Can you imagine trying to suss out the tiebreakers at the end of the year?
As a frame of reference, Grant, there was 11 that won at least 41 last year.
Is this just exactly what Adam Silver and the NBA who crave parity want? This is too hot.
I think it's too hot, but so if you penciled in everyone, so of the teams, let me list them off very quickly. OKC, Denver, Minnesota, the Clippers, the Mavs, the Suns, the Lakers, the Pelicans, the Kings, the Warriors, and the Rockets all won at least 40 last year. Which of those teams are you most worried about not winning 40 this year? It feels like there's one of them.
Yeah, just the Clippers. I think the other way to do it is like Portland, Utah, Clippers, San Antonio. One of those can win 40. The other three may not. Like if you're just thinking like other than those four, and then you say again, who's going to Memphis it? So do the Warriors fall apart? Do the Lakers fall apart to join the Clip? Like do the Kings aren't going to fall apart like that. They're kind of safer. That's I wonder if has that ever happened? I bet that's never happened.
I mean, I'm assuming that there'd just be some really, really, really bad Eastern Conference teams.
Right. Yeah. The West just never loses against the East ever. Yeah. I mean, it's hot, but like I could see how you got there just because we keep doing it. It's really hard to like, other than Portland and Utah, who we just both talked up, like who's losing. I mean, who's basically under 500? I don't know. It's not that easy.
That was a good one. We have back-to-back Thunder ones here. The first one is from Miroslav Shook. Oklahoma City will not reach the Western Conference Finals.
I mean, that has to be a hot take just because if we're going with like what's public sentiment saying, everybody's in on the Thunder, right?
Yes, but aren't you always supposed to bet against the field?
Well, yeah. I mean, but no, this is running up against like the two sides of the hot take. So you don't think this is a hot take?
No.
I think
Well,
if you're weighing it against what most people are thinking right now, and everybody's in the bag for the Thunder,
so if
they're
you're
going to lose in the conference semifinals. Like, I think that's
you mean like they did last year. It's possible.
Statistically, that's likely, right? But if we're talking about like, is this like a contrarian take? Like, I don't know, man. I think everybody thinks the Thunder are going to be great.
Yeah, you know what? That's right. So it's appropriately hot then.
Yeah.
Amir Popchuk. Good one. Here's another one on the Thunder, Grant. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this. I remember the order in this one specifically.
Careful.
Oklahoma City will reach the Western Conference Finals at OKC Steez.
Not hot.
Not hot relative to consensus.
Yeah.
Statistically speaking, the hot take would be the finals, right? Like is that the only, aside from winning the title? So the levels of hot takery for Oklahoma City's end of season finish is reaching the finals or winning the title, right?
I mean, I get, even then it's like they have the best odds in the West, right? To win the title and make the finals.
Oh, yeah. So if you're basing it specifically on consensus, yeah, you're right. So there's not an outcome for Oklahoma City that qualifies as hot in terms of, it would have to be. So you're saying, all right, here's a good one. If I say Oklahoma City loses in the semifinals, that's hotter than saying Oklahoma City wins the title?
I think so. Like, just, I mean, for me personally, that's what I would think. And then look, the odds say it, and then public sentiment is what it is. Everybody just believes in the Thunder, and I count myself among them.
The Sacramento Kings will be a top 4 seed in the West, from Kyle A. Madsen.
That's pretty hot, just because we just listed the teams that were like, well, OKC, stunning if the Kings finish ahead of them. Denver, Dallas, Phoenix. Minnesota. So you got to beat a couple of those to get up to 4th. So that feels appropriately hot to me.
They're the teams that are sort of, because aside from OKC, is there a team, like if you had to figure out the order, even for number, do you even view there as there's a clear-cut second best team in the West?
No, because it could be any one of Denver, Dallas, Minnesota. I think in my mind, like those seem like maybe Phoenix is in that clump too.
All right, we have 2 more, Grant. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
It's Eastern Conference teams though, so you're going to be upset.
Ugh,
I know you're a Western Conference
guy.
Tyrese Maxey will lead the Sixers in points per game, threes, and assists. Brian Hart PR.
I mean, that's hot. He's going to outscore. I mean, is it like that Embiid doesn't qualify? Because the points
threes and assists feel like a given. Yeah, I'm not going to lie.
I mean, the points is where I'm having a hard time. That I guess that makes it a hot take, because that would be, nobody thinks that.
Yeah, but is it appropriately hot if you think he's going to check 2 of these 3 categories, right? And by the way, the path would be like, do they just view it as the ball is going to be in his hands the most? That's not.
It's closer to too hot to me than appropriately hot, because just like Embiid's going to get you 30. Is Maxey getting you 31? Like, how's that going to happen?
Well, is it being getting you 30 when Paul George is on the team?
Well, is Maxey getting you 30 if Paul George is on the team?
Who is more likely to be running the offense?
I mean, Maxey will have the ball plenty. I don't think Maxey's ever going to take more shots than Embiid, and he's damn sure not going to get more free throw attempts. So I just don't know where the points are coming from to be. So it's a hot take. I mean, is where we got to come down on it. I don't know if it's too hot.
I think it's appropriately hot. That was a good one. I thought that was a really good one. I think this is a good one as well. It comes from at OD3 Holiday. Bam Adebayo makes an all NBA team.
Let's see. I don't know. Is that hot? I'm leaning toward that's not a hot take.
So I would say it's appropriately hot just because he's never done it before.
Is that right? Oh my God. Yeah,
so it has to be hot. And Grant, now it's positionless.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's harder when you had to put a center on there. I would say, okay, this is probably, maybe it's not hot enough, but even that is like, so you would still say, oh, he's the 4th best, the 3rd best center in basketball. And like, there's enough bigs to where, okay, is that? So I would say this is appropriately hot because
Yeah,
I certainly
it
view him
is.
as all NBA caliber, but it's not a sure thing.
I would have been if you'd said has Bam Adebayo made an All NBA team, I would have like without hesitation said yeah, of course. But
I
like
wonder.
the fact that he
Sorry, go
hasn't
ahead.
makes this appropriately hot.
Yeah, I mean, he's been an all-star 3 times and he's made 5 all-defense teams.
Yeah.
This was fun. I enjoyed it.
Oh, we're done? All right. What's your favorite hot take of those?
Of the ones that we just got, honestly,
Yeah.
it might be the Tyrese Maxey one.
I know that's mine too, because that made me think like, how does that happen? The best thought exercise for sure.
Yeah, I think that was the one that made me really think the most. I like the Kings one too, because the West is such like just this morass of like good to great teams. So
yeah.
Do you want to take us out of here?
Yeah. Well, this was fun. So many hot takes. I think we covered so many hot takes that I think I have a better understanding of what one is. However, next year when we do this, I will still require clarification. Thanks everybody, especially those who submitted. Appreciate those. A lot of good ones in there. So that was fun. Thanks for contributing there. Maybe we'll do something like that in the future. Although hot takes are really like ripe for that. So appreciate that. If you have not done so already, please remember, as always, rate, review, subscribe, comment on YouTube, help the algorithm love us, promote us, tell your friends, tell your enemies. Join our Discord. Links for that in YouTube and podcast description. That's a great way if you don't want to reach out on Twitter, if you're not on Twitter or whatever, to get into the conversation, submit stuff like we covered today. All good ways to engage. We appreciate all of it. That's going to do it. We're going to close, as always, with a shout to Frank Ntilikina and an apology to Jared Allen.